We're living our truth now. Crystal, what?
Krista who?
Christadelphian?
Did you say Christian Dolphin? So are you from Philadelphia?
Welcome to the Life After Leaving podcast, an ex-Christadelphian podcast.
Hello, heathens, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Zinnia. Today's guest is Pete. Thank you for joining us today, Pete.
Thank you for having me.
So today I'd like to hear your story of becoming an ex-Christadelphian. So I want to go through what your experience was like while you were a Christadelphian, what the process of leaving looked like for you, and where you're at now, and anything you'd want to share with people who may be going through a similar journey. So before we get started, could you first share what region of the world you were in when you were Christadelphian?
So I'm from the UK, and I was mostly in the Midlands growing up. So I think you've had previous callers around Birmingham. So I'm around the east side of Birmingham.
Okay, great. It's nice to have people from all over, and I'm sure people in that region will be excited to hear someone from their area on the podcast. And how long has it been since you left the Christadelphians?
It's about 3 years now.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact date, but roughly.
Yeah, I think for most of us, it was kind of a fluid leaving. All right. So are you ready to get started with your experience?
Yep.
Telling us your story? All right. So were you born into the group?
I was. So I was born into the group, and both sets of grandparents on both sides were also Christadelphians.
Okay. Yeah. So just like my family, it goes back a few generations at least.
Yeah.
And what group were you raised in?
I was in the central group. I think until I was maybe about 16 or 17, I didn't know that there were other groups at all. So it's interesting to hear about all of these different variations.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely been interesting because I was really only exposed to like the central amended, just like you. And then it's been fun to hear about all the differences with the other groups. But I grew up around a lot more drama, so I heard about it at a younger age, I think.
I still don't know what amended is.
It has to do with which statement of faith they chose, and there's one called unamended and one called amended. So Central has the Birmingham amended statement of faith.
Okay.
So it originated in your area.
It's funny. The first time I ever heard about this was when I went to Canada. I never heard about it in the UK. So.
Yeah, Canada had huge splits with the unamendeds, and so I remember that growing up. Even someone from my meeting would go up to Canada for like peace talks kind of thing, where they would try to like figure out how to patch over differences. As far as I know, it didn't work. But yeah, there was a lot of drama when I was younger.
It sounds like a war, peace talks.
That's the best word I can think of to put it. I don't know.
It sounds accurate, to be fair.
Thank you.
Ever sat in on any of these meetings?
I don't think I would want to sit on those meetings. Yeah. Too many big personalities on both sides, I'm sure. What's funny is I'm pretty sure it's called Central because of the meeting in Birmingham's name, because I saw that they had changed at one point, and it was because they changed halls. So I think like the entire group is kind of named after the Birmingham ecclesia.
Is it? So I've heard of Suffolk Street as one from Birmingham.
That was one that I believe split at one point.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a subgroup, I believe.
You're teaching me a lot about the history of Christadelphian in Birmingham.
I've only just started getting into it, but splits was, I believe, the number one most voted for history episode topic when I asked. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to slowly learn more about it and come up with an episode on that soon. Mm. Yeah, because you're not the only one who has no idea what's going on. And then on that topic, you had mentioned to me before we came on the podcast that you had relatives who left the Central CDs and like made their own group. Can you tell me about that just like a little bit?
Yeah. So I don't actually know a huge amount of history to this because it happened quite a long time ago, but one of my sets of grandparents left Central.
Okay.
I believe it was over something doctrinal related.
Usually is.
Disagreed. Yeah, it normally is. But I never kind of actually heard. I'm sure it was mentioned, but I was too young to actually understand what the doctrine they were talking about meant. But
okay.
I think it was just over a doctrinal issue, and they never went back. So there was a group of 4 of them, all within my family, that met on their own, no interaction with any other Christadelphian, and the rest is history.
Oh, did they stay out then in their own group, just the 4 of them pretty much?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. They just made their own little mini group. I wonder how many of those are out there, actually, where there's just like 6 people meeting somewhere and they're like, yeah, we just don't feel like being with everyone else. They're different than us.
I'm curious, actually. I'd love to know. Because even the much bigger groups, a lot of people have never heard of them.
Yeah. So, did they name themselves? Did they give themselves any sort of Christadelphian subgroup name?
Not that I ever heard.
Okay. They're like, we're Christadelphians, but we don't associate with Christadelphians. That's why I'd be like, okay, did you make your own name? But I guess when they're that small, there's really no pressure to do so.
Yeah.
And one question I'm trying to get better at asking more people is, do you have a Bible name, and people in your family specifically and like intentionally have Bible names?
So we all had Bible names.
Okay.
So I'm one of 5. And all of us had Bible names. Thankfully, it was all very simple names.
No Eusebias in your family? John Thomas's daughter?
No. We're all very much traditional English names that also happen to be biblical as well. So we got off quite lightly.
All right. Are you ready to start chatting about what your childhood was like being raised a Christadelphian?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So do you want to start by telling us a little bit about the ecclesias you grew up in?
So we kind of moved around a lot growing up, a lot. Similar theme to, I guess, the grandparents leaving over doctrinal issues. But I think I ended up at 5 or 6 different ecclesias before I was a teenager.
Wow.
I guess, thankfully, in the area that we were, there's a lot of ecclesias within a small space.
So I guess it's pretty easy then to find a different one.
Yeah, so I don't think we ever actually traveled more than, say, 30 minutes to get to an ecclesia. But within 30 minutes, we had probably about 15 options where we were.
That's so many.
It's crazy. I mean, in Birmingham alone, there's probably at least 15 or 18, if not more.
I guess John Thomas is right about picking Birmingham.
Yeah. So one of the places we ended up at, I think the one we spent the longest at in Birmingham, I didn't find out until after we'd left there that there was another one just around the corner. So you drive maybe 30 seconds and you get to another one. And there's a whole group of Christadelphians meeting there for all these years, and I had no idea. So
it's crazy to me that people wouldn't know. Like, you wouldn't have like CYCs where you guys mingled or anything like that?
So there's a lot of kind of, I don't know what the right word is.
Like differences?
Separation.
Separation.
Over a lot of often like doctrinal issues, or people are upset with people. And I think that there's a reason why you would have 2 ecclesias right next to each other. There's going to be some history that a lot of it as well is that the people there, even in that day, might still not have any recollection of what the split was over. But there's still 2 ecclesias, and they still live separately and meet separately. It's crazy. Yeah, so all of the ecclesias I grew up at were very conservative.
Okay, because I was wondering if it might be like one was progressive and one was conservative, like in Australia, where I kind of get that, where it's very different environments.
Yeah, so if you had those 2 ecclesias next to each other, one would have been conservative and the other one was more liberal, I think is the word they use. But all of the ones that I went to that we moved around between were all very conservative. I'd say probably the most conservative that you would find in the UK.
What would be some of the things that would distinguish it if you walked in to know it was one of the more conservative groups?
So a lot of it is down to small things like dress. So it would all be very, very smart dress. Women would always wear hats. One of the odd things is the translations. So you'd only ever use the King James Version. And anyone who used a different version, often it was people visiting that weren't aware.
And they pull out like an English standard.
Yes. Yeah. The authorized version.
The ESV okay.
Yeah. ESV. NIV was one that people hated for some reason. I still don't know why.
Oh, yeah. I think
like it was hated so much. I heard some people say the NIV stood for the not inspired version. So it was a bit petty, but I still have no idea what's wrong with it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's just because they got rid of these and thous, and that was where they drew the line or something like that.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend about this a while ago who said that actually thee and thou back when the King James Version was written was it less formal, and you and yours was more formal.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think if you open the front of the King James Version, when it's referring to the king or King James at that point, it refers to King James as you and yours, because that's more formal.
Oh, that's like more respectful. Okay.
I think so.
That'd be funny that we'd be less respectful to God than to the king.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me a little bit more about what your experience is like, how it felt to be a Christadelphian, and some of the memories that you remember that stick out to you?
So I think a lot of it was just very isolating. So obviously if you're moving around a lot as a kid, it's very hard to form relationships.
Yeah, even in the ecclesia. Were you stable with your school at least, with like classmates?
No, so I would say I had no friends growing up anywhere. So yeah, because in the school environment, I was strongly taught not to associate with these people because they're worldly, they're outside, they could be a bad influence. And then we ended up for the majority of probably the 6-7 years between when I was probably maybe 8 to 14 or 15, something like that. An ecclesia where there was only 2 other kids.
Oh, that's not fun.
Yeah. And they traveled very far to come. So we'd only ever see them on the Sundays, not even midweek, because it
was too much to go on a weeknight. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite isolating. And it's a real shame because the city we were growing up in, there's 3 ecclesias there and a lot of kids and a lot of stuff going on with kids and Sunday schools. And we weren't allowed to go to any of that. We were very much isolated from it. And it's definitely had an impact. So yeah, I remember the local school that I go to, we used to ride our bikes there. I rode there with my brother and home again. And I just remember this one day that makes this really stand out. That we were riding down a road and he stopped us to talk to someone. And I turned around and seen that he'd stopped. And I didn't recognize this person. I assumed it was someone from school. And then he came down and I asked him, and it turns out it was someone from our local ecclesia, like another kid that would have been my age, someone that I could have been friends with. Yeah. And I didn't even recognize them. And they lived 2 minutes away from me.
Wow, what a missed opportunity for you. Like you would think your parents would have approved of that kind of friendship if they weren't encouraging friendships at school, at least with at least another Christadelphian. And what's funny is I've heard people say like, oh, those splits that form these subgroups, it must be hard on those kids. But you were in the central group, you were in the biggest group, and in an area with tons of ecclesias. You certainly weren't like in isolation, as they say, where your family didn't live near other ecclesias or other Christadelphian families, and you were still so isolated. Wow. And that's so sad. Like I relate to some degree with a lot of it, but I grew up in a bustling ecclesia with all my cousins, so there was always kids around, but that does really stink. And I feel like I'm surprised your parents really didn't consider that at all. And even like I was thinking, I was like, I'm surprised Birmingham doesn't have, as far as I know, like a heritage school, you know, where they could put all the Christadelphian students in like they've done in Canada and Australia. Because it sounds like you guys had enough kids in the area if they could all just get along and agree to, you know, be a Christadelphian school and stop making arbitrary boundaries between all of the different ecclesias there. That's so crazy that they can't even get along.
So I believe at one point they were planning to launch a heritage school in Birmingham.
It makes sense, you know?
I heard a lot about that for a few years and it never happened, and I'm not sure what happened to it.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't want you with all those heathens at a public school and there's so many Christadelphian kids, like I could see them having that conversation.
Yeah. So things did change a bit for me kind of coming into teens, because then I started to get to youth weekends and I started to meet some people. But even then, when those people aren't very local to you and it's quite hard to travel sometimes, it's hard to really kind of form lasting friendships in that way.
Yeah, it takes time with each other to get to know each other.
Yeah. So that did get a lot better as I kind of got older and got my own transportation and started to meet people. But yeah, early childhood was quite lonely.
So it sounded like that you married a Christadelphian woman while you were a Christadelphian. So did you meet her at like one of these youth weekends?
I did actually, yeah. It was one of the local ones. Funny enough, it was someone who was at one of the local ones that I hadn't met. Met for the first time at one of these weekends.
Nice.
And the rest is history. So,
oh, well, I'm glad to hear you guys are still together.
Yes, yeah, still very happy.
Good. So it sounds like you missed out on friendships for sure. Was there anything else that you really remember that really differentiated you as a Christadelphian kid compared to the other kids at school?
I think just generally learning to live in the real world.
Growing up in the bubble.
It's so bizarre saying that. But yeah, since leaving, the more I've realized that I missed out on so much. Just the small things, right? People at school going out together, forming these lasting relationships and getting to know people. And university life, for example, I missed out a lot there. I didn't socialize at all at university because obviously in the area that we're at, there was something on almost every night of the week. There was just no time to do anything else.
Yeah, that was kind of like what Chloe had mentioned when she had traveled to the UK. She had found that there was like kingdom classes and different ecclesias would all have different Bible classes on different nights. So what was your schedule kind of like growing up with all that?
Yeah, so same area as Chloe was. So if I wanted to be out every night of the week, I could find something. Wow. So the ecclesia that I was at once a month on a Monday would have mutual improvement class. So young brothers would give talks and prayers and do readings.
So it's kind of like that kingdom class?
It's a different thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's different. They sound the same to me. What was the difference? Was it just brothers like give each other feedback? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to go to that and do that and like have the brothers critique you?
I did, yeah. And I did it voluntarily because actually within that system, it's a very good thing to have.
To ease people into it.
Quite daunting. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's very much optional. You're not forced to do it. And it's done very well when I was there.
Good. Okay.
And there's a couple that would do a meal beforehand every time. And then you'd go along with it. It's very nice.
Yeah, very generous.
Yeah, very generous. And then Tuesday you'd have Bible class, and then someone else did a meal before Bible class for all the young people. That was very nice.
You guys really eat well is the message I'm getting every time I talk to someone who went to the UK.
Yeah. Food gets people to go.
Yeah, more than the pizza party they had at COGAF. You guys had like real home-cooked meals.
Yes. And it was really good food too. Yeah, it's I do really miss that.
It sounds like what the Christadelphians need to do is make a cookbook, because I think all of us would buy that, actually.
Yeah. It was a very good strategy to get people to go to like the Bible classes and the mutual improvement class, because you offer food. Because the city I was in had a university, so you had a lot of university students who were on budgets, and a free meal was very attractive. Not that was their sole motivation for doing that. But
and low skill, go in, you don't have to worry about cooking. You can just...
Yeah.
Easy. And time management wise, if you're so busy, how are you going to have time to cook?
Yeah. And then Wednesday there was a class in someone's house that you could go to. Thursday would be a Bible class at another ecclesia, and then Friday would be like a CYC or a youth gathering. Saturday youth weekend, Sunday meeting, and that's kind of the worst of the weeks when everything lined up. You could be doing something every evening.
Okay. Yeah. So on like an average week, it was probably like 3 days at least a week?
Yeah, 3 days or more.
Okay.
And then Sunday and Saturday are often full days.
Yeah, especially when it's like a gathering weekend or a youth weekend. And it sometimes even involves travel. So it's like your entire Friday night is like traveling and just getting situated. And Sunday again, you've got meeting all morning. And then you've got all your traveling again. Yeah.
It's rough. It's hard to find any time to do anything else.
Yes.
On that schedule. And so I, since leaving, I've joined an archery club. So, and I got really into that, and it's brilliant. I'm kind of hooked on it.
Oh, that's awesome. I know a lot of people got into like the hatchet stuff, a lot of just moving sharp objects. People our generation love.
Yes. Yeah. So this is target shooting. So it's competitive and at set distances and all the kind of equipment. And some of the top archers in the UK are from a club called Marital.
Okay.
And I grew up like 5 miles from there. So
of course, everything was right next to you and you just couldn't see it. You just couldn't access it.
I had no idea. And the thing is, even if I knew it was there, I wouldn't have had time.
Yeah. But honestly, the only thing that really changed was whether you were Christadelphian or not. You're in the same area, you're the same person with the same like interests and personality. It was really just your time and your priorities were set for you. It sounds like you disagree.
I don't think I really had a personality necessarily. I think my personality was very much set for me by the system, and I always felt scared to actually find what my interests were or what my personality was. And it's something I've very much spent a lot of time trying to do since leaving, because in that system, you are created to be the perfect Christadelphian in order to pass the judgment based on the criteria that they believe you need to in order to pass the judgment. So it doesn't really leave too much wiggle room for making your own decisions about your own personality.
I would agree, because I do hear about people who tend to do something that is more individual, whether it's I'm going to wear a different type of head covering or no head covering as opposed to a hat. And I hear about the pushback and criticism they get and the letters and the phone calls. And like you get so much criticism to keep you in the bubble. Like you have to be exactly the same as everyone else. This is the standard we've set. And so it makes sense. I mean, the things that make us individuals are kind of punished when the emphasis is conformity and they're using, these control tactics to try to enforce that and kind of get everyone to be pretty uniform.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I don't love, because it always sounded like God just wanted robots in the kingdom. And I was like, well, if he wanted that, why didn't he just make people with no free will and just make like mindless human slaves who just sing to him all day and tell him how great he is? Like, if that's really what he wants, okay, just do it. Like, why make people different?
Yeah. A lot of those variations, you can't really defend it with Bible verses either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't wearing head coverings in like Abraham's day. Come on.
Yeah. And the difference between, say, wearing a hat or like a scarf, for example, it's stuff that is so minor that actually it shouldn't matter.
And yet there's probably been a lot of splits over that.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the events you were going to, like Bible schools and stuff?
So I traveled quite a bit, actually, mostly to Canada.
Everyone loves Canada. No one's visiting America. Everyone's like, I went to Canada. I skipped America.
I went to America once too.
Okay.
So yeah, Manitoulin Youth Conference. I went to the family camp once as well, Manitoulin.
I didn't do that one, just the youth one, yeah.
In the UK, I went to two different ones. So I went to Swanwick. Before that, kind of growing up, I went to another one called the Hertfordshire Bible School. And you've got to be very careful with this one, because there's two. And one of them is ultra conservative and one is ultra liberal. It happens on different dates, thankfully. So this was a group of people who thought Swanwick was not conservative enough or disagreed with certain doctrine. I still don't remember the exact lines.
It's the same story over and over.
Yeah. It's so sad, really.
It is. It's like you could just be one big family, but it just doesn't work. It's funny. Yeah.
So up until probably 15, 16, I had that opinion, because that's what I was given, was Swanwick is too liberal. You shouldn't go there. You might be led astray.
Of course, by those other Christadelphians.
Yeah. And then I go there once, and it's just, there's nothing wrong with it. And actually... It's still very conservative.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Where it's like, this isn't, a den of thieves or whatever. Like, this is fine.
Yeah. So I went to UKYC as well, in the UK.
Okay.
So it's a big youth gathering. In America, I went to Midwest Bible School one year.
Okay, Hanover, I think. I went to that one once.
I just remember it being called Midwest. So it was after Manitoulin Family Camp, and we drove north off the island and then west and then south past Detroit. And it was maybe another couple of hours. So that was interesting. That was on a university campus, but it was just hundreds of Christadelphians never met before.
Yeah.
And interesting experience.
Yeah, a lot of the ones I went to were at college campuses, so that was my baseline. And then we did one at a ski resort, so that was when it finally changed, and it was a little different.
And then one I haven't mentioned to you already. So the Promised Land Youth Conference. So this was a youth conference in Israel.
Wow.
So even more holy.
Of course, you're on the Holy Land.
It was a really great experience, actually, to go and see all of the places that you kind of read about. And
they did like field trips while you were there?
Yeah, so it was
Nice.
a tour all the way around Israel to look at all of the places and the archaeological sites, and spend time in Jerusalem. And then we stop at each of the destinations, and then the brother that was leading this would give a talk about the relevancy of it, but with the Christadelphian spin.
I mean, not like that part, but I'd float in the Dead Sea.
Yeah, Dead Sea was really, really fun. Yeah, so the most interesting bit was that we went up to a massive cathedral or church or something, and it was very symbolic for some reason. I can't remember why, because we didn't talk about it.
Well, of course, because that's not Christadelphian. The Christadelphians didn't make that church, so why does it matter?
Yeah, and it's up on the top of a cliff, and you look out across a massive valley. And
pretty.
This church had some kind of really important symbology for Catholics, for example, and we went all the way up there. And the speaker took us to the edge and turned around and said, "This is the valley that Armageddon is."
Oh, well, that's
turned our back on this massive cathedral that all the other tourists were going to see, and just spoke about Armageddon and how everyone's going to be killed.
Yeah, this isn't culty at all. No,
not culty at all.
No, not culty.
It was a really fun trip, actually, and it was nice to see.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, to kind of bring the stories to life a bit more.
Absolutely, because it's, it was all of it was written so long ago, and in areas of the world that most of the Christadelphians aren't in, so it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's a neat one. I'm glad you shared that one too. That's pretty cool. And I don't think I know a lot of people who've been out there for something like that.
I think they only did it once. So this youth conference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's another interesting story to that, actually.
Oh, I'm here for stories.
This is an example of providence at work.
Okay.
So the person who arranged this had booked some accommodation next to the Dead Sea for our group, and it's like 40, 50 of us, and they'd gone out beforehand to find somewhere local to buy food to feed us all.
Was it loaves and fishes?
Not quite, but it's kind of at that level.
Oh no, it's just all unleavened bread. That's all you get.
So on the conference itself, when we went out there, and we got to the hotel, and she went out to the shop to buy all the food to feed us, and the shop had been destroyed in a sinkhole.
What?
Because it's on the edge of the Dead Sea, and it had been swallowed up, so there was nowhere to buy food. So we went into the hotel area that we were in, and they walked into the dining room, and there was places set out for all of us. So it turns out that the hotel was feeding us.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't realize that it included the food, and it was just coincidence that this shop.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that worked out.
But yeah,
well, that's good for you. Not great for the shop owner.
Yeah, so I don't believe in providence, but if it was real, that would be a very good example of.
Yeah, that felt like providence, though, because everything kind of worked out for you guys.
Yeah,
and Armageddon didn't happen while you were there, so even better.
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of. So, how did you feel about the Bible schools?
I kind of really enjoyed them, actually. Mm-hmm. Most of them, at least. I kind of struggled to form the relationships with people while I was there. But just being part of a large group and feeling like you belong to something was really nice. And then you get kind of the high afterwards as well.
Mm-hmm. That used to happen to me too. Yeah. You just feel like holy and connected to like something more important than you. It was an interesting feeling.
Yeah. I can't remember much about these Bible schools, to be fair.
They all kind of blurred together to me. I just remember sitting through classes. The one Bible school, we had a trip to the beach and they do sandcastle contests. That's like the one I remember the most. And what was funny was I went on a vacation and accidentally went to the same beach, and I didn't know it until I got there. And I was like, wait, why is this so familiar? Like driving to this beach. And I was like, oh,
Sandcastles at a Bible school.
yeah. I remember people were making all kinds of like interesting sculptures. Some people were really good. But they would do like a contest, and that was like the highlight of the week. And I remember we would go to like this big chapel on the school's campus, and they would do Bible readings, and then they did prizes. And so you had like a sheet of paper of questions, and if you could answer all the questions, you'd like raise your hand, and all the kids got prizes. And like I guess it's like age groups, so maybe adults got prizes too. But I just remember every day you'd have to find time to do the readings at Bible school while doing all the classes, while attending all the lectures, all the extracurricular activities, and then get there for that. I think before dinner or after dinner. Yeah. It was a packed day. And you had a test every day on the Bible readings. So that was what I remember.
We had prizes at our Bible schools too, like the ones I grew up at, but we didn't have to go through all the tests to get them.
Yeah, they didn't quiz you in order to earn your prize. I think you had to like turn in your sheets and stuff too. I don't know. Yeah,
we didn't have that. Although I think some of my prizes growing up were things like volumes of Eureka and Elpis Israel, as like a 10, 12-year-old kid who's got no idea how to read something like that.
That's like what Robert Roberts was reading when he was like 11. So they're like, if Robert Roberts can do it, so can you.
Yeah.
No, I remember getting like fans, like those little paper fans and stuff. Like silly little kids prizes. My dad always brought glow sticks, and I give glow sticks to all the kids.
No, we never had anything fun. It was always books.
I'll be honest, the UK doesn't sound like the most fun group of Christadelphians. They're low in my ranking for fun.
Yeah.
To our listeners, tell me who's the most fun. I'm guessing Australia. That's my bet right now.
I've heard people say that it's more extreme in Australia. So
I'm saying liberal. Specifically the liberal groups, I think would be a good time. I think I would have fun with them.
Yeah, I think so.
The conservatives, I think, would scare me. Like they all walk in wearing the same suit, and I'm like, nope.
Yeah. So that's why I said kind of in the UK it was conservative, but probably not as conservative as you get in Australia, because we never had that wearing the same suit color.
Yeah.
It feels like another level.
Yeah, that does. That's a little too intense for me.
Yeah.
So why don't we move into getting older? So if you married a Christadelphian girl, I'm guessing you got baptized at some point?
Yes. I was baptized, I think I was 17 or 18.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was after I went to Manitoulin the first time.
Like right after? Like it prompted it, or just?
No. So I actually wanted to be baptized for a long time, and I didn't do it.
Like how young do you think you were when you first started thinking about it?
It was probably about 3 years before I actually did it. Okay. So it was 3 years of wanting to be baptized, but equally not feeling like I was good enough or ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to go through, because I was being told that the standard for baptism was so high that it's a standard that I can never meet. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's the same for other people, but I believed that the expectation was that I would have to rehearse or recite every single verse that I needed to be suitable to be baptized.
That's so intense. Wow.
Yeah. So I was going through these preparation for baptism.
Like the booklets and stuff?
Yeah. Trying to memorize every verse.
Wow.
And then I'd get a couple in, and then I couldn't retain that information. So yeah, I've since been diagnosed with ADHD, which kind of explains why I struggled so much with kind of focusing in that environment and remembering. And it's almost been like having to completely relearn how I learn. And I had no chance in that environment. I was fighting a losing battle.
Was that really what you were seeing around you too?
I was seeing a lot of other people being baptized. I was wondering how they were passing the interviews for baptism. But I think actually in my head I was just playing up what you needed in order to pass that interview.
Okay, because I was curious if you were taking classes or hearing that from like brothers and stuff there who were potentially involved with that kind of stuff.
No, it's just the expectation that I was seeing at home and just what I believed it was. So I guess it's just set up as, so you'd have to have an interview with two brothers and you'd have to answer all of their questions. And it's just the fear of that. And
it almost sounded like you felt like you had to be perfect in order to do it too. Like you had to have every verse, you had to recite them perfectly from the King James Version, you know, and I know it is a lot of material, and it's interesting hearing all these kids, like literally all under 18, going through this theological exam in order to be members of their church in like adult capacity. It's a lot of pressure on kids for sure.
Yeah. And it's when I actually ended up going through with it, it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's what I found too. So that makes sense then to me as well.
Yeah.
But you're not the only one who got like really hyped up about it in like a negative way, like that daunting feeling of going over it. You know, one person had said that they thought it was going to be the hardest exam in their entire life.
Yes.
So I think that was kind of where you were at too, because I'm sure you were like passing exams in school all the time, but they weren't like oral exams with no materials. I'm sure, like with these ones, you just go in and have to know it.
Yeah.
So do you remember any of the other prompts that pushed you to keep wanting to join?
So I genuinely believed. I believed entirely. So from a young age, I didn't even start to have any doubts at all until early 20s. So at that point, I was fully integrated into it. It's almost like actually there was such a strong fear to even question that there wasn't even a possibility that I would have any doubts.
Well, if you did, you would face some consequences, whether social or tangible, like some people where they were pushed into classes with people and stuff like that to remediate their doubts.
Yeah. So I kept hearing people say to me, it's really important that you do your own study and come to your own conclusions. But then I was observing that actually what you have to do is come to the same conclusion that they've already found, or bad things happen.
And you always have to be in the group. You have to go to meeting. Because I imagine they did the record keeping where you were there too, where they had someone who was always doing attendance.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was like the biggest thing that got flagged. They didn't flag like, oh, you didn't do your independent study this week. They'd be like, you weren't there with the group this week.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't tick the box.
Yeah. That's what you got to do. You got to tick all the boxes. Well, then you're raised always seeing the adults who have gone through that ceremony, who are, you know, taking the bread and wine every Sunday. And then at that point, you start watching all your peers start going through it and doing that transition in the meeting from being part of the kids to being part of the adults by getting baptized.
Yeah. I think a lot of the difficulty with that is also the expectation and the pressure from people to do it.
Yeah, I remember the adults at youth weekends started really hammering kids at like Bible schools and stuff. They'd be like, you have to get baptized. Why aren't you baptized? There's like fear of like, if you're not baptized. Yeah.
So I remember one situation where I was in Canada, someone that we were staying with. And at that point, I'd say I knew quite a lot. I could defend all of the doctrines, and I believed it and I was living it. But I wasn't baptized because of this anxiety. And I remember someone asking me to do a prayer.
Before you were baptized?
They didn't realize I wasn't baptized.
Oh.
And that happened probably three times.
Oh,
and
wow.
That is just another level of anxiety, like to say to someone, oh, I'm not actually baptized.
And they're like, well, why aren't you? Clearly you know it. And if you have the knowledge and you're not baptized, then God's going to be like, you're not coming into the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make it where it's like kind of a lose-lose, where it's like, if you're not baptized and you know it, you could be held accountable. And that's a negative that you weren't baptized because you didn't like declare your faith and join. But then if you are, it's like, well, pressure's on you. You got to be perfect. Otherwise, you still might not make it.
Yep. So much fear, so much stress too.
Well, I mean, that's what gets you moving. They use that as the motivator. You know, you have to always be in fear, kind of. So what was your baptism like? Any thoughts on that once you actually went through with it, or how things changed after?
I don't remember it. It's so long ago.
Okay, at least it was a low drama baptism then, I guess.
It was low drama, but there was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So the city that I grew up in, 3 ecclesias, one was very big and all the functions were held there. It's kind of where we got married.
Okay.
And
so did they host baptisms then?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They hosted the baptism, and I think the room was full, and there's people there I had never met before. It was very fast. Mm-hmm. I felt no different before and after.
Surprisingly, I'm like, if I'm sinless, why do I feel the same?
Yes, yeah. It's you kind of expect this kind of weight off your shoulders, but there was nothing.
Yeah. And then after that, you were officially a brother, and I guess you would have been a brother for a number of years since you only left a few years ago.
It's probably maybe 6 years.
Mm-hmm. So then you started doing like prayers and exhortations and things like that, I assume, at some point after that?
Yeah, it took me a long time to get into it, and I started off with doing readings, because that's the easy one. You just get up on the platform, you read a book, or even then,
chapter,
that can go wrong. You say the wrong word, someone's going to say something.
Or you pronounce it wrong, or you bring up the wrong version.
I got told off maybe twice by different people.
Really? Just for reading? What was it?
Yeah. So one of them was, there's a verse that has the word bloody in it, I think.
Okay.
Talking about Solomon, or I can't remember now. Mm-hmm. And I got told off for saying that word instead of replacing it with something else.
Oh.
So how am I meant to know?
Because in your culture, bloody is like an insult, right?
Yeah.
Over here, it's not, but I'm at least aware of that. But that's funny because that's God's word. You can't edit God's word. Come on.
Yeah.
They're just like, just ignore what God said, because God's word offends me right now.
Yeah.
Okay, then why are you in a church where you say you want to someone read it, the Bible?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
That's a funny one.
There's a big thing about using the Yahweh name. I don't know if that's come up before.
I feel like a while ago I remember people starting to talk about that a little bit, but I don't remember it being a big thing here.
So I guess if you're reading the King James Version, when it says the Lord, sometimes it's in capitals, or some of it is in capitals, and there's some variation. But I think generally the idea was that when it's in capitals, the original Hebrew word is YHWH, which we don't have the vowels. People guess that it's Yahweh.
Yeah.
And I think it was just one of these other reverence things of, if you're referring to God, you should call him by his name. But there's a bit of confusion because some of the verses aren't clear, right? Sometimes you've got Lord where it's a capital first letter and then the rest of it isn't. And I was being asked to do this as like 12, 13-year-old kid.
To like substitute it and figure out which one is God's word on the fly as you read it in front of a crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember getting it wrong once, and I got told off for that.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Just reading. And you said that was like the lowest level thing. Like that was the easy thing to do, and people still critiqued it. I don't remember that happening at my meeting with people criticizing how people read it. You just hoped for the best, and if someone really butchered a pronunciation, you just kind of cringed and moved on.
Yeah.
People are trying to be like, and the order of Melchizedek, and you're just like, good job, you did it, keep going.
Yeah. No, I was told I shouldn't try and use Yahweh if I'm not absolutely certain which times it would be.
And isn't there also El in the Bible, like the god El, like early on or something like that? Because I remember reading one book or part of it about like one theologian's idea that the Old Testament, the first few books, were potentially multiple manuscripts spliced together, because you can basically make like a whole book where it just uses the El version, and like just one book that uses like the Yahweh version or something like that. So I remember that they had different words for it, and they thought that it could potentially be even like two entirely different writings. Like one's written by a priest and one might have been written by someone else. So I remember hearing a few interesting things after leaving about that, about how the different uses of God could even signify potentially different writers.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of that. Because I guess in the text you've got God, which I think is El in the Hebrew. And then you've got the Lord or Yahweh and various other ones. But yeah, that is really interesting.
Yes, and I Googled it just to see if it was widely accepted. And there was some skeptics of that theory, but there were some people who were like, yeah, it's an interesting theory. So
yeah.
But not the kind of thing you'd hear about in the Christadelphians. It was more in the broader world. People are actually talking about it more as like a book and who wrote it and how did this come to be and things like that. So it's interesting just to hear another perspective there.
Yeah, that's very much off limits within Christadelphia.
Yeah, John Thomas figured it all out. Come on. There's no need to ask any more questions about anything.
Well, he had a shipwreck and he nearly died. So
that's who I take all of my peer-reviewed information from, is just one man almost dying. That's who needs peer review, actually.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to talk any more about what it was like being a brother at the meeting?
So I guess going from readings that then kind of led into prayers and some talks, which were far more anxious.
I believe it, yeah.
Because that's just another level of, if you say the wrong thing in either of those things, it's looked down on a lot more.
Yeah, and you could do a whole idea or exhortation someone doesn't like.
Yes, yeah. You potentially have people coming up to you afterwards and challenging you on things, and it's rare for that to happen, but it's just the anxiety of that. So I remember it took me a very long time to actually feel able to do prayers.
People judged prayers?
Yeah, people would judge them. One of the big ways, there's a few that I can think of, but say you and yours and thee and thou.
Okay, yeah, that was one that I've heard before, is the language wasn't reverent enough and like Old English enough.
Yeah. But people would judge it based on the length. It was too short. It was too long. The tone wasn't good enough. It wasn't reverent enough because the tone, or it was too casual, or they didn't quote enough verses. They quoted too much. It was too long.
Might as well just give people a script at that point if you have that many conditions. Be like, here's the prayer for the wine. Read it. Like at that point, if you're not going to allow anyone to say an individual prayer, why even bother? They're like, this is the prayer God wants. Okay, show me where it is in the Bible and I'll read that prayer. Okay.
Yeah. Like,
it's interesting to hear how intense it became. And again, my joke is because I don't think it was all biblical necessarily. Like that was the standard that was actually set. I think that was very much the standard set by individuals in these meetings and the culture of the Christadelphians. But that's so intense. Again, I don't remember being that intense where I was. Again, like if someone went off script, you just kind of like chuckle and be like, whatever. That's why I felt I was in a more liberal ecclesia, because we didn't usually have as many intense spats as a lot of the other ones that were really trying to enforce the conformity and stuff. And I got away with wearing some stuff I probably shouldn't have worn. It was a little more casual, but that's interesting to hear about. That sounds awful, honestly. I would not want to give a prayer in those conditions. Because just the amount of stress, and especially for someone who may have already been having anxiety, being in that environment is absolutely going to exacerbate that.
Yeah. So I got to the point where I had a little notebook and I'd written out.
Like prayers you could read, or?
Yeah, prayers that I could read out. And then it just felt like that also was a problem.
Really? People didn't like that it wasn't off the cuff?
So I don't think anyone ever said anything, but I always felt that that was looked down on. And maybe that was just my anxious brain kind of kicking in and feeling judged. But I
mean, at that point, you would have been judged for anything. So you were probably kind of right. Someone probably didn't like that.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, that's not a great environment for growth and public speaking. I don't think that's what they do at the Toastmasters. Like I think Heather had done. I don't think they just criticize you the whole time.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else to say about prayers?
No, I just ended up just repeating them from a book, and it didn't feel real.
In what way? Like it didn't feel genuine, or it didn't feel like you were actually speaking to God? It just felt like you were speaking to these people who wanted to hear basically the same thing over and over.
Yeah, it felt like the way that I was praying was engineered to try and keep the people in the room happy. and not to actually pray as prayer was meant to be.
Yeah, like from your heart to God, which I
Yeah.
always thought was the intention of prayer. Like you pray by yourself, you can pray in your heart, you can pray out loud, you can pray on a mountain like Rob.
I didn't climb any mountains, but
it sounds like you were missing out. That sounded pretty legit.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it sounded like it was challenging for you to make that adjustment into being a brother. And I know I was always a little jealous because growing up kind of as a fairly intellectual person, I ended up loving public speaking when I was given the opportunity to get into it. Like I would have been great at that if I had been given that opportunity, I think, in a Christadelphian setting. Like if I was in one of those liberal Australian ecclesias, sure, I probably would have gone up and talked to people. And now I get to do it on a podcast, which is, I feel like, a little similar. But you had mentioned a story about your wife, and I was wondering if you could share it because I thought it was wild, and I feel like I would have related to her so much.
Yeah, so she was at one point told that it's a shame that you weren't born male because your intelligence will be wasted, essentially because she wouldn't be able to give the talks that she would be very good at giving. And I guess what I didn't mention is, do you want to have a guess who said this to her?
I hope it wasn't like her dad.
No.
Okay. I don't know.
It was her Sunday school teacher.
What?
Yeah.
His job is to educate her, and he's like, this is a waste of my time.
And she was probably about 14 at that time.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess from his point of view, he wasn't meaning that in any malicious way, but it really kind of shows what that environment is like.
Yeah,
and the way women are treated.
It was very like a backhanded compliment where it's like, you're intelligent, you're capable. Too bad we will not allow you to use those talents at all because of your sex, and we are very sexist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. I definitely feel for her because, like I said, I felt like that was kind of like what I grew up in, but no one gave me any backhanded compliments. They're like, you're just going to just sit there quietly. Whether or not you're intelligent, we don't care.
Yeah. And I'm not so sure if you took it kind of to heart back then, but I think looking back at it, having left and really kind of realizing what that meant and what the implication was, that, it kind of hurts a lot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this is like a Victorian religion. It came out in like the 1800s, very different era. And so at that time, society at large was more on the same page with that narrative. Yeah. We didn't have all the women's rights movements that we've had since then, a lot of societal changes since then. And so it's kind of funny nowadays to have them saying that to women when like we go out and like in my meeting, I believe the women were more educated. There were a lot of women with master's degrees. There was almost all of them, like at least had a bachelor's degree. They were very educated. They were leading all the Sunday schools, like 9 times out of 10 from what I remember. And, had great jobs. Most of them were full-time employed. For my generation, at least, the older one was more like part-time or volunteer and stuff. But everyone kind of had their own lives outside of meeting. So it was funny that they could go out in the world, put pants on, get educated, and then they'd come into this like Victorian environment on Sundays to be like, well, you have to wear a dress and you have to be quiet and you have to give up your rights as soon as you walk in the door, and pretend that all these men are more educated than you because they're going to be the ones whose opinion matters and who's going to tell you information and like teach you. And it's just interesting how now you have that kind of conflict between the world you're actually living in and then the world you're kind of creating in these ecclesias. And it's funny that divide kind of keeps growing.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how far it can get before it falls apart.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people who are willing and want to live in that bubble. They want what that gives them, that security, that community.
Yep.
And that's fine. I still have family that are Christadelphians, and that's their choice. They're adults. But like I said, it's interesting. The longer it goes on, the more it's just really, I think, difficult to try to basically allow women to be out of that bubble all week long. And then on one day a week, at least where I was, where it was more like minimum one day a week at the meeting, as opposed to like 3 or 4 minimum, you get to kind of be a full human in the world. But I'm glad to hear that there are a lot of movements within the Christadelphians to try to give women more opportunities, at least within the ecclesia, so that they have less of that sexism that they're dealing with on the regular, especially when it's like an 18-year-old goes up there to give an exhortation or something, and there's like grown women with PhDs in the audience, and you're just like, I feel like they also have something to share, like these intelligent women.
I haven't heard of that really changing too much in the UK, at least, especially not in the conservative side.
Yeah, I don't think on the conservative side, but I've at least heard from some people that some of the ecclesias in the UK and Australia are allowing and moving towards having women taking on more roles and having more speaking roles, especially. Yeah,
it's definitely a positive. It's such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, you have half the people aren't able to contribute fully. Especially with a small group, you would think you would want everyone to be all hands on board with keeping it going and have everyone do what's best for them. You know, if she would have been an amazing speaker, but you felt too anxious or just not inclined to that kind of work, then that would make sense to have her be doing that. But not with sexism, because women shouldn't do that.
I think it all kind of comes back to what they believe in terms of they have such a strong belief that the verses do say this, and that they are genuinely doing what they think they're being told to do.
Based on the Bible.
So it's such a difficult problem, because I don't think their belief in what the Bible says is going to change. It's going to be a choice between following what they believe they should be doing as much as it harms people, or choosing that it's not moral.
Yeah, I think some of it honestly comes down to issues with the Bible, because a lot of these aren't necessarily just Christadelphian issues. Many of them are issues among Christianity, among many groups. But I think when you have a book written by men about men for men, you kind of have a book that really is very sexist and doesn't work very well for modern women. Yeah.
I think some groups do manage to interpret it in a way that takes out that sexism. But I don't see any chance that the group I grew up in, at least, would ever go to that extent.
I really doubt it. I think it would take a lot of work and a lot of open-minded, tolerant people. And when people have grown up in the Christadelphian group, I think it's less common that you would have those attributes in adults who are consciously choosing to change that. And especially considering the backlash they would get from people who aren't open-minded about that. Because I've even heard of, I think I can share this, but someone had said that they had heard that an ecclesia in Scotland had allowed a gay brother or gay couple to join, and the Christadelphian magazine I heard was basically like, you're never going to hear from this ecclesia again in this magazine, because they were trying to like use their influence to again crush the nonconformity. And that was a little disappointing to hear that groups that were trying to move towards being more tolerant to people who are different than, that rigid model of the perfect Christadelphian were being punished, socially in the group and being kind of pushed out.
Yeah. And what sits behind all of that is still the fear. It's the fear of, if we allow this to happen, is it going to impact our salvation?
I mean, they've been buying into this one version. This is the truth, and this is the way to get to the kingdom. So it's a risky decision to say, oh, maybe God's actually more loving than we gave him credit for. This Yahweh Elohim version. Whatever name you want to give him. But the version we grew up with, I think, was very intense. A very intense God.
Yeah.
So let's keep talking a little bit about the Christadelphian culture, because I know you've mentioned the anxiety you felt in that culture. And so maybe let's explore that a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think you had one of your sessions on mental health.
We had a religious trauma therapist come on. Yes.
Yeah. So I imagine a lot of that was covered. I don't remember the exact details from that one, but for me, I've kind of spent a lot of time looking at how, I guess, the environment that I grew up in is impacting the way that my brain is working now. So I still struggle with anxiety day to day, to varying degrees, depending on what's going on. But when you're born, I guess 25% of your brain has developed by that point.
Yeah, they have their little big heads and their little bodies. It's cute.
Yeah. And then I think by the age of 5, you get to 90% volume.
Oh, that's pretty fast. Okay.
And then by about age 10, you get to 100% of the size. But throughout childhood, your brain is developing and I guess creating all of the neural pathways and just learning how to survive in the world.
Yeah, there's a very dark study about, like in psychology textbooks, about a girl who was not given that ability to develop, and it was very, very, very negative and like very abusive. Yeah, because she couldn't speak, she couldn't do any of the basic human things, not because of neurological reasons, but because of developmental, and it's all about when you're young.
Yeah. So I think if the brain is developing in an environment where it's constantly feeling unsafe, that's going to have an impact on how it develops and the network that it creates. And
like your wiring is for trauma.
So if you grow up being told that everyone around you is a danger in some way, the people in the world around you might mislead you and affect your salvation, and even sometimes people within Christadelphia, because I guess a lot of the splits are also fear driven. If you believe this Christadelphian over this Christadelphian, then there's also risk in that. And there's fear with everything. I mean, everything I've spoken about so far in terms of the prayers and the readings and
that's just the social stuff. That's not even the Armageddon apocalypse stuff.
Yes. And to be fair, that's probably a bigger source of fear, probably the biggest source of fear. I still remember, I think I've spoken to quite a few ex-Christadelphians, and this seems to be, even Christadelphians actually, it seems to be quite a common thing where growing up as a kid, you come home one day and no one's there.
Yeah, and you're terrified, like, where the hell are they? Did God take them?
Yeah, have I been left behind? Have I not been good enough? Or as a kid, I haven't been baptized yet. Have I been
miss out? Yeah.
And just all of that fear that sits behind essentially your whole worldview that's created for you is going to have an impact on your day-to-day life and how your brain works.
And it's funny because that's like the first thing you think of in those situations. Your mind takes a very dark turn because the adults around you are talking about that constantly.
So I think really that shapes the majority of my kind of experience of Christadelphia and my upbringing in that environment, which is quite sad.
I'm sorry, but I don't know. It's just, I think it's so ridiculous that it makes me laugh because it's just sad, and they want this to be this beautiful thing. It's the most important thing in the world. It's the best thing in the world. But when you actually talk to people about it, like, oh, how was it? It's like, well, for a lot of people, it wasn't great. It was harmful in many ways. And I don't think people realize the extent of it until they leave and realize they have issues to work on, where they had lasting impacts from different things that weren't healthy for them to be exposed to their whole life, or especially in their childhood when you're developing. And I'm finding kind of new things. I wouldn't say every day now. But I'm sure the first few years. Well,
all the time. So at work, I started to notice that in kind of meetings with, say, quite senior stakeholders or leaders, I would freeze and I couldn't say anything. And there was a few situations where I completely froze to the point that I wasn't speaking at all. And I've kind of worked through this, and I think it is related to the fact that just the inherent risk within Christadelphia is saying something wrong to someone in a position of authority. Like if you say something doctrinally wrong, for example, I watched so many people essentially leave this ecclesia because they'd said something that was marginally wrong. And I guess all the anxiety to saying the wrong thing in prayers and readings, and
it was hardwired in.
Response. But on the positive side, once you start identifying these things and realizing what it is, you can work with it.
Absolutely.
And I've gone into those meetings aware that that's happening. And I've noticed that once I get past, say, the first 5 minutes and I kind of build a bit of rapport with them, that stops happening because I start to trust that they're not going to do the same thing or the thing that I'm fearing that will happen. Yeah,
it sounds like almost immersion therapy, where it's like you just put yourself in the situation, but mentally you're telling yourself it's going to be different. Here's what I'm going to do. And then the positive feedback is healing, where it's like, they aren't going to treat me the same. This is going to be different. I have some control in my environment. Like, this is okay. And you kind of start rebuilding those connections where it's like, okay, this is a situation where I used to feel unsafe, and now I'm in a situation that feels safer, even if it's still scary. But I can teach myself that it will be okay now.
Yeah, and it's a lot of situations are naturally going to give you anxiety because it's a natural emotion, but it's just making sure it's proportionate to the situation,
to the reality. Yeah. These are some great conversations. And you said that even when it comes to like the influence over your life, it came out in a few different ways, right?
Yeah. So I think more in the sense of controlling. It's very limiting on the types of careers that you can go for. So that there's large sections that are no-go, like being a lawyer, or often I think emergency services, like police.
Yeah, I've heard anything to do with like the law.
Yeah, like military related and stuff like that. So I'm in software engineering, and it even restricted the companies that I could go for.
Really? How does that work?
Because if you're contracted out to an organization that writes software for ballistic missiles, for example, which
okay, that's too associated with military to be kosher. Okay.
Yeah. So I had to be careful with the companies that I work for.
But it's funny because even looking through some of the historical stuff, I'm finding interesting what careers were allowed back then, and watching the development as they're like, no, you can't be this now. And I was like, okay, weird, because that wasn't there from the get-go. That was something that developed culturally, and obviously not really based in the Bible. They're kind of running with verses.
And even being a midwife isn't acceptable for some people.
John Thomas was a midwife, so got you there.
Depends what gender you are, I guess.
Sexism. Okay. So, as someone who married a Christadelphian woman, can you tell me a little bit about what led up to that from the Christadelphian perspective? Because I know some people take marriage classes, but I don't think that's come up too much on the podcast yet. And I didn't do that because I've never married a Christadelphian. Yeah,
so it's not really kind of something that's spoken about too much. And I didn't know this happened until we got engaged, and then someone spoke to us about this. So there's a couple in the ecclesia that sat down with us, went through classes, and spoke about, I guess, how to be a married couple.
Did they have like booklets for that they followed, or was this couple kind of just made up their own thing to teach you guys? Do you remember?
I believe there was a booklet, but I can't remember seeing it. We weren't given one. I think they were definitely going through something that was structured.
Okay.
I don't know how widespread that was. And a lot of it was really good stuff. Is kind of talking about how to share finances and
practical.
A lot of very practical things, and how to kind of handle disagreement, or it just a lot of stuff that you kind of don't really hear about too much. And I guess a lot of people within Christadelphia marry quite young.
Yes.
Those are kind of very good things. Unfortunately, there's elements of bad things that came up. So bearing in mind that it was me and my wife doing this together, we were both sat together talking to this older couple.
Okay.
And they told my wife that sex was a marital right, and that she shouldn't withhold it from me if we were upset at each other for any reason. Yes. This is being taught to young people in the group.
Yeah.
And really, I think since leaving, I found it kind of really important to kind of put labels on things that are accurate and factual. And that is coercive rape.
Because she does not give her consent. Yeah. She is being coerced. She is being kind of manipulated using the Bible to say you have to do this. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, using doctrine is not consent. Yeah, as you say. So it's just shocking. It's
in today's day and age.
Yeah. You don't realize how widespread it is. And this is a lot of people that I grew up with that I have a lot of respect for. I had a lot of respect for.
Mm-hmm. And now you hear what their marriage is like, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh. And that's what's being
Yeah.
taught, because this group, has the blessing of those Christadelphians in that ecclesia to do this class, and presumably are using materials from an official Christadelphian source.
Yes. Yeah.
So like that's the endorsed doctrine.
Yeah. And it was so shocking because it's the same group that will argue about the morality of which Bible versions to use, and that having a tattoo is wrong, or cutting your hair at the wrong length is wrong. And they're teaching coercive rape.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do you balance those two things?
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah, it's amazing how patriarchal it is. And I think the lack of ethics, because I do know some people, I think it was Steve who talked about his dad raising him to have ethics and, that community focus. And it wasn't just what does the Bible says, it says what makes you a good person, what's the right action to take kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if you're speaking ethically and you're trying to raise an ethical kid, you raise them with treat others as you want to be treated. And you allow them to have a voice to say no, so that they don't end up in a situation where they could be coercively raped. And those are important things for their physical and emotional well-being. And so being in situations where women are actively told your voice doesn't matter, your opinion doesn't matter, is very harmful, not only for that, but especially with potentially having sexual crimes occurring, whether it's child abuse, and you can't tell the brother, no, I don't want that. And if they use doctrine, to somehow coerce them, or just something else like power, like a Sunday school teacher or something, which is going to come up in another episode, unfortunately. But it's interesting to see how many different situations it appears where women are told, don't speak up, don't have a voice. And then we see the consequences when we talk to the adults, where they're like, I was not able to tell anyone, or no one listened when I used my voice in a dangerous situation. And then seeing this is literally taught to women, and unfortunately to men too, which is another dangerous thing, where you're potentially creating and encouraging rapists.
Yep.
And I don't imagine that's good for a relationship. It's you want your relationship to be built on trust and honesty and mutual respect. And instead it's no, I get to do whatever I want to you, and you need to just endure it. Yeah.
The sad thing is you look at the verse that they use to justify that, and it's a two-way thing.
Do you remember what the verse was?
I could find it, but it's essentially the one that says that the woman's body belongs to the man, but it also says the man's body belongs to the woman. So it's not a one-way thing, but it's always taught that way.
It's almost like men have all the power and choose how things are interpreted. And it always happens to be to their benefit somehow. Somehow the men never get the short end of the stick, where it's you got to work harder. You got to make sure you do everything for your woman. She's in charge. Make her happy. It's no, you're allowed to make her miserable. You're allowed to harm her. You're allowed to do all this stuff. It's well, that's what the Bible says. I'm it's a problem to have a book written by men for men being in charge of women. It doesn't work out that well, I don't think.
And it just compounds the problem when probably less so in our generation, but previous generations, where women were discouraged from getting jobs and working and building their own kind of safety net.
Their income,
it's creating all these marriages where you can't say no because you can't escape.
Yeah, you have no ability to do so if you don't have a safe place to go, if you don't have financial independence. Those sorts of things are huge for encouraging and allowing for abuse to continue.
Yeah,
it's sad to see. And I even know it happened in my ecclesia, because I do know that there are stories of my grandma trying to escape my grandpa. And amazingly, she left it when her youngest child was 18. Why do you think that happened? Is that just a funny coincidence? No, I think she was waiting for the chance where she could finally get independence and not have it affecting her children. And I didn't hear a ton of stories, but hearing them, I could see how she was stuck in a really terrible situation, having been raised Christadelphian, marrying a Christadelphian, and then ending up in abuse. And it was just really disappointing to hear that and then see that generation after generation, they're really not addressing it head on and being like, hey, we need to stop claiming the Bible says abuse is okay.
Yeah.
And like actually talk about it and say, like you said, like name it and say, this is what it is. And have some ethics to say, this is not okay. People do not deserve to be treated this way. Children do not deserve to be treated this way. Women in marriages don't deserve to be treated that way.
Yeah. And also if they genuinely believe that the Bible says to do that, it should start making people question whether it is written by a loving, moral being.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of entity wants this to happen to half their population? So while we're talking about violence against women in Christadelphia, I just wanted to share personally that I appreciate that you reached out to me after you listened to my episode, because you were there that year at Manitoulin. And not only did you offer really kind words, but you offered to share a statement with the police, and I really appreciate that. And I think people will be glad to hear that, you know, as a man who grew up among the Christadelphians, you were showing support to a woman who experienced something negative among the Christadelphians when you had the opportunity to do so. So thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome. Yeah. And I'm really sorry you had to go through that. I can't imagine what that would have been like. Yeah.
These kinds of situations, you know, on the full scale of violence against women, whether it's something like that or something more physical, it definitely causes emotional harms, and definitely contributes to harms associated with the group, for sure. So I don't feel that we need to get into that too much on your episode. And even if we wanted to, I don't want to necessarily influence any other listeners who were thinking about sharing a statement of their own. I doubt at this point it would even lead to an arrest, because it's been so many years and there's been hiccups in the road. But if anyone had interest where they had something that they wanted to share, I can always facilitate them getting that information to the Canadian police if they wanted to do that. And it's funny because of this, with my episode, I finally was able to get in touch with the Ontario police directly. And this is their first impression of the Christadelphians up there. The one police officer I was speaking with had not heard of them, didn't realize they were there. She's like, are you sure it was on Manitoulin? And I was like, yeah, it was. I had to pull up the website and give them the address. And she's like, oh my God, it is. So this is their first impression. So good job, guys. So that was funny. But now there is stuff on file. And what the most interesting thing for me was that after I left, there were some witnesses who saw something that I heard rumors of later. And that was part of why I followed up with the people who I had reported this incident to. And they have denied that. So what would be curious, and why I don't want to influence that at all, would be if other people could corroborate that. Because if those allegations had any evidence for it, you know, like old emails, text messages, photos, things like that, other statements by other credible witnesses, it would be interesting if at some point they were at minimum caught those Christadelphians lying, because they're two very different stories. And if one of them is true, then there could have been a potential cover-up. So I thought that was very interesting to come out of these conversations, at least at a minimum. So it was wild, but it was interesting going through that. And we did what we could. So we did something. And, yeah.
It's crazy that just in terms of the cover-up, I remember them saying that they had no records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they refused to give anything to the police, is my understanding. They're just like, oh, we don't have anything. We didn't email anyone. We didn't do anything. It was all by phone call. I was like, if you did, that's very sketchy, first off, that there was no record.
So I went to one of the youth conferences and I helped lead one of them. Mm-hmm. And all of that communication was over email. And they even sent attachments with all of the attendees' personal details in there. Like there was no thought to data protection or anything. Mm-hmm. And the fact they have no records at all is just unbelievable.
I find it very suspect as well, especially because I was even able to get emails that were from that time in my emails, and I was able to find some of the documents they had sent me from that time, because a lot of us don't go through and intensely, archive and purge that stuff. And especially for people who are involved in it, you would think they would have like folders for different years or whatever, but somehow all of that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see how they handled the situation, and really was not able to get any help from Ecclesia Safe. And if anything, it was kind of a negative experience interacting with them in the wake of me speaking out about this. So stinks, but it's all right. It's just part of my story. And like I said, I wanted to at least give you some credit, especially as a man who was in the Christadelphians, that there are people who are helpful and trying to be good people. So, just appreciate it. All right. So do you want to talk a little bit about like the beliefs and attitudes that you saw there too, besides just the sexism?
Yeah, so one of the kind of things that really stands out is just how anti-science everyone was. And I think it all comes from the fact that right at the beginning you're taught about this creation 6,000 years ago that goes against almost every element of science. I think almost every single category of science would have some form of thing that they would say is evidence that this isn't true. And in order to believe literally that that's what happened. Some people do believe in both, but I guess the literal creation, you can't believe in the full extent of evolution.
No, when you ask an archaeologist, a paleontologist, a chemist, all of these different people, it really does not hold up. I agree. And I feel like I noticed the same thing because I had an interest in the sciences and I had teachers pushing me towards the sciences. And I know mentally I felt so stressed and conflicted thinking about trying to pursue a career in the sciences. Even if it wasn't specifically said that you couldn't do it, you could tell that there would be conflict between the belief systems.
Yeah. And I think if you're in an environment where you have to do that, you have to look at all of these scientists with decades of experience and research into their relevant fields. And you have to accept that they don't know what they're talking about. They're wrong.
But you do, who's never looked into it.
Yeah.
And is just believing this book at face value because you were told to.
Yeah. And I kind of get if someone's faith is so strong, you can understand how people get to that conclusion.
Yes, I know how mentally you can. Absolutely.
But it's just when you get into that state where you feel able to just discredit a whole field of work just because the Bible says one thing, and all of these scientists must be stupid if that's what you think. It kind of leads to them discrediting other areas of science, like medicine, for example, and distrusting it. So I think one of the weird things that I saw was like distrusting modern medicine.
I know some groups see that. I don't think it's everyone, but again, I have seen some Facebook pages for Christadelphians push anti-vaccination stuff and things like that.
Yeah, I think it tends to be more on the conservative side.
I think so too. Again, this is not a precise science. This is just our impressions.
Yeah. So my granddad, for example, got into a natural remedy called colloidal silver.
I've heard of that.
It's essentially drinking very small doses of silver. And historically, I think it comes up in the Victorian era. I'm not very good with history, but something historic, where they used to use silver spoons. And the monarchs would turn a slight tinge of blue because the silver kind of does that. So my granddad ended up turning blue because he was ingesting too much silver.
I do think I've heard that because I had to take one medicine that I think had a little bit of that in it. And they're like, don't take this for too long. Like, this is a very restricted regimen under the guidance of your doctor. Yeah. But what's interesting to me is also just, I think in order to have the confidence to say, I don't trust any of these qualified people who are really, I believe, doing their best to represent their fields and push science forward by learning about everything and then seeing what's current and then trying to move it forward with research. I think you have to have a huge ego in order to say, oh, I don't believe any of that. I'm smarter than them. I feel like that's not just a healthy view.
Yeah, it's very much confirmation bias as well. Just accepting the information that fits your existing worldview.
Yeah, because you're not really supposed to question it. And if you have a question that's out of line, we've kind of all heard how that goes. It doesn't go well.
Yeah.
But you're constantly around people and forced to be around people who will agree with one view. So it's not like you're getting a lot of different opinions and then pulling your beliefs out of that with what feels right or what makes the most sense based on actual research outside of the group.
Yeah. So growing up, I was given homeopathy as a medicine, so no painkillers.
Really?
To treat anything.
You're like a little homestead kid.
Yeah, living in a city.
That's so funny because I know there's a lot more of that in America lately. So I do see that.
So obviously growing up, I had no idea of what homeopathy was. I just, as a kid, I trusted what I was given. But kind of having researched it since, it's never been proven to outperform a placebo in any test.
Interesting. Well, I hear placebos are actually pretty high. It's like 50%.
Yeah,
is what I've heard.
The number, but yeah, it's pretty high. But there's been an award out there, something like $1 million reward for anyone that can prove homeopathy works in a clinical
in like a
setting.
Clinical setting, yeah, where it's like a test that meets very high standards for how it was set.
Yeah, and in order to pass that, it has to outperform a placebo, and no one has ever collected that because
that's wild. I haven't heard that.
It's just bizarre that like the burden of proof between one thing is so much lower than another, right? So they're willing to blindly accept homeopathy, for example, with no evidence of it working.
Yeah.
But then deny evolution.
or even modern medical treatments.
Yes. Yeah.
That have had to go through like government regulations and third-party testing and being reproducible studies where it's not a bias of the person writing it that it worked, but where other people can reproduce the results. Like, oh, this is actually the results. And like to some extent, I get some of it because science started somewhere and science really started in nature, I feel like. I took chemistry classes and one of the things you make is, I think, like salicylic acid and like aspirin. And so we literally would generate it through chemical reactions in like a classroom laboratory setting. And it was funny because then you hear like this started in like willow bark among the Native Americans. And so they would I believe they made like willow bark tea to get that anti-inflammatory medicine into their bodies. And so like to some degree, I get that people are always looking to nature for healing remedies. And many of our remedies and even mechanical innovations come from like animals and stuff. So I have a lot of respect for nature, but I do have a lot of respect for science and all of that as well.
Yeah.
So definitely an interesting topic. And I feel like I was also that young kid that was given a Strong's Concordance and was told like, just look up the word and it'll prove that it means what we say it means. It was funny.
Yeah. Blows my mind. It's, I had a Strong's Concordance for a long time. I had no idea what it did or what it was for. And it was like this book. But,
I think it was a Sunday school present for me at like the end of the year from one of my years where I was like the only student and she got me a concordance as a gift.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people might not even know what a Strong's Concordance is.
That's true. If people aren't Christadelphians, do you want to tell them what it is?
Yeah, so it's essentially a lookup. So if you open the English version of the Bible, you see a word and you want to know what Hebrew word or Greek word was translated in order to get that English word. You use the concordance. So it will track back to a definition of the Hebrew word, and you can trace through where that Hebrew word has been translated elsewhere to other words. And it will also show you all the possible meanings or English words that would or could be translated from the Hebrew word, which is where the abuse comes in, because you just look at all of the different definitions and you pick the one that fits what you think it should mean.
Yeah, translation is a tricky topic, even for regular literature. You trying to get the flow of a poem to be the same while holding the meaning is such a tricky art.
Yeah. So to have a 12-year-old with this book and no training at all, no historical context or research or anything, just picking the words. And it comes back to just, again, seeing other people's fields of research as just not having any validity. So you have very kind of intelligent people who are doing these translations and picking specific words for specific reasons,
and people who may fluently know these languages too to understand concepts, or they may historically have an interpretation of those times from in-depth studies as well.
Yeah. And I guess, so one of the arguments that Christadelphians will use is that a lot of the verses are translated with a bias, like someone has
Yeah,
an
it's like they're
existing
Catholic or
doctrine.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is going to be some element of that in there.
Yeah, it's human translation.
Yeah. But a 12-year-old without any of the context is not going to do any better than anyone else.
Yeah, you can't say you're so much more skilled and able to do it than those professionals who did actually do it. Once again, the ego that is kind of taught in the group where it's like, we're outsmarting all of those people. We're the smartest.
Yeah. I think someone actually shared this on the Facebook group, that there's more denominations of Christianity than there are verses in the Bible.
That would be interesting. I'd be curious if that was true. There are really so many. It's hard to get an exact count, though, of how many groups there are. That's the harder part. You can figure out how many verses are in the Bible, but they're always expanding. Think about how many splits there are that we don't even know about in the Christadelphians, and trying to name all of those individually and count them individually. Yeah.
So there is a count somewhere. I don't know how accurate it actually is, but it's within a few thousand of it. So it's like 41 verse 40,000.
And that's crazy, though, if that is true. Yeah.
Yeah. So to believe that if you are a Christian and you think your interpretation of it is correct, you have to essentially say that all of these other 39,999 denominations are wrong.
And that's only if you believe in the Bible.
Yeah.
Let alone denying every other holy book or philosophy and all of those other things in the world.
Yeah.
I also find one of the things I like doing on the podcast as well is bringing people context, because I think we're oblivious of how much we didn't have as well, where when you think about people who actually were trained in the Bible and talking then to a biblical scholar and getting all that history and context that we missed, I think it's really eye-opening to just get a different perspective and realize how much we were kind of missing in certain ways from what we were taught. All right. So are there any other stories you want to share from that time in your life?
Yeah. So I think in terms of stories, I think it's important to also call out the positives. Because it wasn't all bad, as much as a lot of what I've spoken about at the moment is quite bad. But yeah, I think one thing that really stood out to me, that I've told this to people at work and they just can't believe it. Like, so I flew to Canada with a group of people, and these Christadelphians I've never met before gave us the keys to their car, and we're staying in their house, and they have never met us before.
Nope.
And I think just the level of hospitality that is shown to people within the group, assuming that you're on good terms with the group.
Yeah, they have a good reputation.
Yeah, it's I think it's quite hard to find that in any other group.
I do agree, but it's also funny how ironic it is, because the people in the group will probably be the most critical of you, but they'll also treat you the best when you're visiting. Like, I feel like if you're visiting brother or sister, people offer to take you to lunch. I mean, they do have like a schedule where you're kind of pressured to do that, but nonetheless, they'll like take you to lunch. I remember we had someone who stayed in an RV in our driveway for like an entire summer. It was a while. And we're just like, of course we would just have this person that lived, on our property all summer. But it was the same way. Like, if we were traveling, their families would take us in and be like, oh yeah, you could stay here as long as you need. And that was kind of always how it was, where people would open their doors for you. You could crash on their couch or floor or whatever. They would make space for you because you were Christadelphian. That's why it's just so funny to hear about the criticism and the fights too. It's almost like siblings, where it's like, we love you, but we can't get along.
Yeah. I think you kind of get that in any group of people, but I think given how extreme Christadelphia is, it just pushed those to the extreme as well.
Yeah.
And extreme fallings out and extreme generosity. So,
yeah. It's very much a continuum. But it was interesting to experience that, because, I really don't find that replicated. I think because the sense of identity is so strong is my feeling, just because everyone's so on the same page. Like, you're baptized, you've taken on this, baptism of Christ. But I feel like I can't think of any other identity where you really come together like every week, where people around the world would be like, yes, because you have that same identity as me, I'll take you in. Like, I don't think an American in another country would be like, oh, you're an American, come stay with me. Like, no, like, it's not a close enough identity. to really be like, oh, I'll open my doors to you. You're one of us. It's interesting. The hospitality is pretty legendary, and the food. Those are the things that I feel like so many people have brought up that were positives when they look back at the group, and things that they're kind of doing right if they're open to feedback about what people think about them. So next, let's move into what led up to you leaving the Christadelphians. So if you want to start by saying where you think you first started on that road to leaving the group.
So it started for me, I think a friend that I'd met at Manitoulin at one point came over to stay. And we went to a few talks together. And I just noticed that he was asking questions. And it's such a weird thing to look back at and think that was so weird that he was asking questions.
That was unique.
Like, how dare he ask questions?
You're supposed to accept it at face value.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And up until this point, I feel like I had accepted pretty much everything at face value and not even thought about it. Not even thought that, all of this stuff I'm being told, I might not actually agree with. And I think the example that I remember was, it was a talk on prophecy, and it's the typical Ezekiel 38 one where you have Russia coming south to Israel to claim a spoil, and it preempts the return of Jesus.
Yep, it's always about Russia.
Always about Russia. And there was a big trend that went around for a while around here. I don't know if it reached America, but all of the speakers kept saying that that Russia would come down for oil. Because I think Israel had found some big oil fields or gas fields.
I may have heard that at one point a long time ago, but I don't remember it being really big, but I think that was a very widely seen theory. But in America, a lot of our wars have been around oil as well, so and resources. So they were saying because spoil has the word oil in it. Oh, that's it. Look up in your concordance and see what that says.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah. Because they definitely originally wrote it in English.
Isn't that funny how it's whatever works for them is definitely what it is? Yeah. So if the concordance had said it didn't work for that word, they would just ignore it. But if it had been like, oh, the Hebrew word has oil in it, then it would have absolutely been the Hebrew meaning that they would have focused on. But now it's the English one.
Crazy. So my friend he turned to me afterwards and he just said, do you know how much oil Russia already has? It's just a question. And so I can't remember the exact amount, but it's something in the region of 100 or 1,000 times more than what Israel had just found. And therefore it's not really that relevant. Yeah,
so no real incentive.
Yeah. I mean, you see the cost of the war at the moment with Russia and Ukraine, the cost of a war would far outweigh the value of any oil that was there.
Yes. Yeah.
So that just can't be right. And it was such a tiny thing. Like, it doesn't really matter so much that someone had said this and it was wrong. But for me, it was just monumental in realizing that Christadelphians will repeat these things that just can't be correct. And they'll say it with all this certainty.
And they have that platform. They're all at the front. Everyone's listening to them. People are recording these lectures and sharing them. And no one's fact-checking them.
Yeah. So I think that was kind of the turning point for me, is that I realized I just implicitly believed everything I'd been told or taught growing up. So I started to ask questions, and that doesn't end well, generally.
How did it go for you? What were some of the questions? Was it like prophecy stuff or all over now once Pandora's box was open?
It very much started in prophecy, and it took a long time to work through prophecy and then reach other things.
Okay.
So it probably took about 4 years from that point until deciding that we were going to leave.
Okay. So it was very doctrinal for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was very, very doctrinal. So I think at some point I discovered the logical fallacies and biases. Never heard of them before.
Yeah, all those psychological terms, and you're like, wait, I know I've seen this before.
Yeah. So it's almost like I say now that I taught myself how to think.
Honestly, it's pretty true. And that's unfortunately kind of a red flag that you're in a very cultish environment where you realize you actually weren't thinking for yourself independently.
Yeah. I remember a very, very conservative Christadelphian at some point on this journey saying to me, what even is critical thinking?
Like talking down, like why do we want that, or just genuinely asking?
Just not knowing what it was.
Oh, genuinely not knowing?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
wow.
where I was before I started on this journey. I obviously you're not taught how to reason within this group because you're just told what to believe. And
you're very insulated. I remember someone saying to me, "Oh, that was so sexist, don't you think so?" And I was like, I literally don't know what that is. I don't know what sexism and feminism means and like how exactly to define it and identify it. Yeah. You weren't taught to identify those things. Those concepts weren't really things you were exposed to. And as strange as it may seem now, being someone in the world where these are concepts that play all the time, it was interesting how isolated you are where those just aren't things that you're going to be talking about or learning about at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So at some point I started giving talks and a lot of anxiety with that.
Absolutely. I get it.
So I decided that any talk that I was going to give, I would make sure I researched it myself first to the point where I agreed with it.
Okay. And so you would feel confident in it and you know that you're not in any way misleading people, it sounds like. Yeah.
So I'd agreed to do a talk on Brexit prophecy.
Ooh, is that in the Bible?
Well, apparently it was, yes. I can't remember exactly the details of it. So it's so in Ezekiel 38, there's
again?
Yeah.
I thought that was about Russia.
And
is it about America too?
I mean, America actually does come into the prophecy in some way, or apparently, yeah.
Ooh.
If you read Elpis Israel, it'll be in there somewhere. So obviously, in that prophecy, they're mentioning these historic locations, like I think Rosh is Russia or something, or
supposedly.
Yeah, and what they're trying to do is find the historic location of that place and see which modern country is where that place is.
Yeah, like literal geographical thing. Okay.
And there's one of those called Tarshish.
Yes.
And
like
historically, no one knows where it was.
Yeah.
So you I think you hear the phrase a few times, the ships of Tarshish and like that. And in Elpis Israel, John Thomas has just said, this is Britain. That's where it all comes from. And he's got some reasons for that based on the time he lived in.
Yes.
That are all so loosely kind of connected. A lot of the reasons aren't even valid today that he used. Because
that sounds about right.
Like part of his reasoning was the East India Trading Company.
Yeah, and that's really something this modern day and age, huh?
Yeah. But then obviously because John Thomas has said it, that's continued through the teachings of Christadelphia, and it's still being repeated today.
It's funny how Victorian it is when you really look at it. It's grounded in the 1800s. Like it makes sense if you're in the 1800s, but that's why they had so many converts then, because it made sense in that context when it was modern. Yeah. It doesn't age well, I don't think, but this is funny to hear just another example of it.
Yeah. So obviously Tarshish is mentioned separately to like a European Union is meant to be in there somewhere, like a group of nations.
Okay.
So because Tarshish is on its own, they believe that Tarshish would not be part of the European Union.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It feels like leapfrogging to get from one idea to the next. And I've got it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm getting confused even thinking through this again and how bizarre. It's like connecting 50 dots that are all kind of not quite there.
Yeah. It's trying to make something fit because you want it to fit, not because if you didn't have all of these things, it would make sense.
So credit to Christadelphians, but they were actually prophesying about this before.
Okay.
So it was a big thing when Britain joined the European Union.
Okay.
There was outrage because they believed this was moving away from the prophecy. And in some circles, it has been a thing. They've been waiting for this to happen.
Okay, because it's so interesting hearing from someone from the UK, because in my mind, all the prophecies I saw over here in America were revisionist after the fact kind of nonsense. But so hearing from you grew up with that and felt it was really prophecy was happening and it was kind of beforehand.
Yeah, it was a really, really big thing. Yeah.
Okay. But when they joined, did they believe that a Brexit was coming someday?
Yes. So obviously they joined the EU well before my time. I don't remember exactly when, but I remember there are letters in like the Christadelphian or something like that do mention that we should look for this to be reversed at some point. But as soon as there was any inkling of that happening coming up to Brexit, it went wild. Like all of the talks were on prophecy, we were talking about it.
100%. I totally get that.
Yeah. So obviously I decided to do this talk on the subject, and I was brought in kind of really committed. I believed it. I started to look into it. So I started to look at the historical location of Tarshish, the first building block that you need to prove for this to stand up.
Yes.
And I went on to academia.com. There's like just a website that lists all of these academic papers from the experts that actually really know this subject.
Yes.
And I found, I can't remember, there's something like 50 to 100 or more papers on Tarshish. Not a single one mentions Britain. None of them. It's not even considered to be an option from the people who are actually researching this. And there's a lot of other potential or better fits, like south of Spain or Sardinia or other places. And it just really kind of shocked me that this is something that is so heavily ingrained into what Christadelphians were teaching me at this point. And it's wrong.
The very basic part of it was wrong.
Yeah. So they go to great lengths to try and tie it to Britain in different ways, but the experts in the field will not agree with that.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, again, the founder of the group was in that area, and he believed he was kind of like this prophet figure, as much as they don't use that term. But he had to make it relevant for the people he was preaching to.
Yeah.
And relevant for that place in the world where they were very white people centric. You know, of course, white people had to be part of the fulfillment of prophecy.
Yeah.
But I feel like it says a lot about the people who were involved in the early, founding of the religion and where they were in the world for that. Because I feel like if he had been in like the Middle East or in some of these areas that are closer to places where it was written, it would have been very different. He wouldn't have randomly been like, oh yeah, it was definitely Britain. Like, I feel like if he had never been to Britain, it wouldn't have been a contender. That's my suspicion.
You can actually look at some like other videos on YouTube about Tarshish, and you look at the comments, and a lot of people are saying different places, and it just happens to be where they live.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why it's funny that, especially with this, with the Christadelphians in general, the traditional strongholds, which it is changing, and there's research on that, but the traditional strongholds early on were America, where John Thomas began developing it, Britain, when he went back to and was often there, and then Australia. And I was like, of all the regions in the world to not be based on like the Bible, those are like the furthest areas in many ways from that region where these books were written and taking place. God was suddenly like, yeah, all those people I was caring about, those were my people in that area. I've just given up on them. Now it's these people from totally different random locations. Yeah. Those are my people, the Americans, the British, the Australians. Those are my chosen people now. I was like, that's a sharp left turn after how many thousands of years of history are like supposedly recorded in the Bible, or at least centuries. And then they're like, nah. And yet somehow they're never mentioned. I don't think America was prophesied in the Bible. I don't think Australia was prophesied in the Bible.
I've never heard anyone talk about Australia, actually, but I have heard America. So it's something to do with like young lions. I think I don't. Yeah.
I think it would be a very hard sell to get me to believe that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who want to believe that, but I think it's your own ego saying, I have to be in here.
Yeah. So having found this, right? This
eye-opening. Absolutely.
It's amazing, right? It's nothing to do with doctrine. It's nothing that would have impacted the statement of faith or anything like that. I can still believe in all of the Christadelphian doctrines.
Yeah.
And this doesn't impact anything.
But it's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's just the facts of the world.
Yeah. No one wanted to know. So
yeah, how did that talk go? Like, were you able to give it? What happened?
So in the end, I pulled out of the talk. Because there was nothing I could say.
Yeah.
And I really didn't think it would be welcome to stand up and say none of this is true, but not actually replace it with anything else.
Yeah, here's all the reasons it's wrong.
Yeah, that never goes down well.
No, I think that would have burned you right out of the group right then and there.
I think so. But I went and spoke to people about this.
Okay.
And most people didn't want to listen. As soon as you mention any form of doubt, it just feels like it's hushed up and people don't want to hear. So maybe behind closed doors in private, but even something so minor.
Yeah.
No one
and
cares.
Something that feels fairly indisputable. It doesn't feel like you're saying, oh, my interpretation is different, which I've heard has caused conflict. This is genuinely just, if you go online to the most reputable sources for theories, not a single one agrees with Christadelphians.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're going to choose the Christadelphians over that.
Yeah.
But again, I think it comes down to the loyalty and fear, where it's like, I'm too afraid to try to believe anything else or even open myself up to doubt, because that would be very dangerous for me. And my loyalty to the group is what my salvation depends on. So I'm going to prioritize that over learning about the world around us and about what is the most likely truth of the matter.
Yeah. I find it so ironic that because this was the beginning of the end for me. And it was all about things that they didn't need to say, right? Prophecy, it's not a doctrine. You don't need it. But they're stretching it so far to the point that it makes no sense. And it's putting doubts into people's minds. And then that snowballs to the doctrines. So they're shooting themselves in the foot.
That's actually really funny. Yeah, that's true. It was their intensity there and their desire to show, I guess, maybe their relevance and their ability to be, right on that topic, that they were in the know. They're closest to God. They're the ones that found the truth. They're the ones who you should be trusting as the world changes and everything else is scary and new. We're certain. We know what's going on. They're trying to say they're the source that people should trust while all these scary changes are happening in the world. And then it actually pushes people out instead of bringing people in like they wanted. That's so funny.
Yeah.
The irony there.
I remember a talk at a Bible school while this was going on. And I got this like mini iPad to put in my Bible case, slotted in perfectly, but it meant that I could start fact checking things. while I was sat there.
Oh, I love this. Oh, tell me about it.
And it was brilliant. All of a sudden, all these talks got far more fun.
I hope this catches on with any of the listeners who are on the fringe, where they're like still attending and listening. I'll be so curious if anyone would be up for doing that.
Yeah, because I mean, if it doesn't stand up to basic fact, then it's wrong, right?
Yeah,
it shouldn't be a risk to do that. And if you're being told not to do that, then alarm bells should be going off.
Because then it's not about truth anymore. That's about control.
Yeah. So this speaker was, I think they'd seen all of the other prophecy speakers and were just trying to do the same thing, connecting dots that didn't exist. And he stood up and he genuinely said that that the world is coming to an end, I think, or because the Catholics believe in theistic evolution, I think was the thing.
Oh.
Yeah. That was my reaction. Like, wait, what? And he showed an article of the chief astrologer, I think, of the Catholic Church, had claimed that evolution was
Well, that's
real.
a fun job.
Yeah.
I'm a chief astrologer of anything. That sounds great. Sounds like an ancient mystic.
Yeah. And obviously that means the Catholic Church now believes in evolution and supports it. So I got my iPad out and I was just checking this. I found an article from 10 days after this saying chief astrologer has been sacked by the Catholic Church.
Oh, this is fun. Even fact checking the Catholics is fun.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the end of the world, it was the end of that person's job. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. So I went and showed the speaker that as well. A moment of madness.
And I'm sure that went over really well. Can you tell us about that?
It was just, obviously they read it and they agreed with it and that's fine. But then the defenses come up and it's like, well, they still believe that.
And if they've already spoken at the platform, how many people in the audience now believe that because the damage was kind of already done. And I've never heard of revision where like someone goes up and is like, okay, so last week we did find that something was an error, and they like do that with the announcements and like clarify something. I don't remember anyone trying to be that transparent. And if they did, I feel like it would be manipulative, where they'd be like, actually, we don't agree with him and it deviates from our core doctrines. That I could expect and believe. But even still, I don't remember anyone doing that, because I feel like that would have been the most honest and transparent way for any, organization to handle a situation like that, where it's like, oh, we accidentally said something that wasn't true. Let us correct it. That way people don't walk away with the wrong ideas. That would have been, I think, the most appropriate thing, as opposed to everyone just ignoring it.
It's now, when you say that, it's actually weird looking back and thinking that didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's so weird, because it's not a major thing. People are always going to make mistakes because we're human beings. But
absolutely.
not correct it is, it's bizarre.
Yeah, that feels problematic, because especially when you call yourself the truth, like what if you lie or even just an honest error happens, shouldn't you correct it and talk about it? That way you can at least say, like, we're trying to be the most truthful we can be. I feel like if you're not doing that, then you're like, well, my intention is still there because I wanted to manipulate people into thinking that this is a problem and this pushes my narrative. And it's like, okay, well, if that's what you wanted, then you got it.
I've heard a Christadelphian say that.
Well, I did hear that in one of the episodes too. Someone said that they would use something that was wrong. Yeah.
So I have heard a Christadelphian agree that what they've said is wrong, but decide to continue to say it because it will convince people to be more faithful, essentially.
Wow. Like someone in your ecclesia had said that?
It's hard. I can't go too much into more detail because it's quite identifiable, but there are people in the group that are
that
knowingly sharing something they believe to be false because they think there is a good aspect to it. It will build people's faith, even though it's not true.
Yeah, if your faith isn't built on things that are true, then what was the point of that? Won't it topple eventually when people find out then? The idea is just don't let them find out the truth then. That seems like the opposite of what Christadelphians are supposed to be doing. Let's prevent them from finding out the truth. New catchphrase. Interesting. Well, It's interesting to hear how often that happens, that you're not the only one that shared that story, honestly, because, again, people from all different parts of the world listening and contributing to this, it's interesting to see when these things are more common than I even knew. That multiple people are witnessing that. Also, I feel like I'd love to see a Christadelphian fact checker come up where they're actually trying to, like, if you really want to make it a group that is more reputable, I think it would be interesting to see that happen, where they cut down on those incidents happening.
I would make a prediction and say that it would lead to a lot of those people leaving.
I would suspect, given that's what happened with you. But how telling is that that's not something they can do, or it would potentially cause people to leave? Yeah.
I mean, I've met quite a few Christadelphians who have gone down the same route and decided to stay because they believe it. So it's, it does go both ways.
Okay. But for you, it led you out.
Yeah. So I'd say I had different pillars of my faith at that point.
Okay.
Prophecy fell, and then all of the others snowballed with it. And it all started from realizing that I was just being told stuff that made no sense. And when I started to actually look at it myself and see if I believed it or agreed with it, it didn't stand up to the level of scrutiny that I wanted.
That's so funny to hear you just say that, honestly. After you hear all the cliches of, like, research it for yourself, and then the moment you do, that's what happens. Yeah, it reminds me of Rob, because I remember him talking about the prophecy kind of pillar, as you described, falling for him too, and as he went through all of the different aspects of his faith that he had used to bolster his faith, them all coming down. It sounds very similar to what you experienced.
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess you would have probably been pulling away in the meeting from doing talks and things like that as you started on this journey of really evaluating the beliefs that you held and what they were based on.
Yeah, I kind of stuck mostly to, like, exhortations because they're quite safe in terms of trying to build someone up and just say something positive.
Okay.
You can kind of skirt around a lot of the problematic things like prophecy. But yeah, I mean, towards the end, I wasn't doing any more talks. I didn't really get to a point where I was doing many talks anyway.
Okay.
But I stopped doing talks. I stopped doing readings as well, and I stopped doing prayers because it didn't feel right to do it, for me at least. But it got people talking, which...
Oh, because even the lack of doing it?
Yeah, because I started off just with that I'm not feeling well. But after you've done that for a month, people start asking questions and forming their own opinions.
So how fast was this process? It sounds like you were starting to get heat for it, where there's pressure on you to go back to how you were.
So from start to finish, about 4 years. It's kind of quite vague to me now because it's quite a while back. But I think that section was probably about 4 to 6 months maybe of actually starting to engage with people and talking to people about these doubts.
Okay.
So yeah, the ecclesia that I was at that point was really great. And all of the people there were very welcoming. And I was having like private chats with maybe 3 or 4 of them in confidence in the background, just to see if there's anything that they could say that would convince me otherwise.
So I guess you had pretty good relationships with those individuals then in order to have those more vulnerable conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Of all the ecclesias I've been to, I have a lot of respect for them at that ecclesia, and they were always very welcoming and supportive of us.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
I can't imagine having to go through that at any of the other more conservative ecclesias that we would have been at, because I've heard stories of people traveling the length of the country to turn up at people's doors and ask them why they're not attending, and it's I couldn't handle that.
Yeah, that's not comfortable for anyone. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before you kind of officially left?
Yeah, I guess so in terms of people just forming their own opinions, that was a big thing. So we actually left before we were completely convinced.
Oh, okay.
We left because of the way that we were treated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we obviously I was having these chats in private with people, and I had a few chats with other people outside of this ecclesia privately, and I have no idea who broke our trust, but at some point it got back to me that there was a rumor going around the whole area that we'd already been disfellowshipped for believing in theistic evolution. And wow. At that point, I had no opinions on theistic evolution at all. Like I was willing to accept if the Bible was true, then creation, that's fine. It was more of I don't want to look into this. But for some reason, this rumor.
That's interesting that was the thing that the rumor was on anyways. That's weird, as opposed to something based on more truth. Yeah.
I suspect there's one possible cause of it. Is like a comment that I made. Someone had made this argument that theistic evolution was a Catholic idea, which again, fact checking is it's a load of rubbish. It's not where it came from. But I think simply saying something
contrary,
people just piled on and assumed, oh, that must mean that you don't agree with it or you agree with it. And so the thing that really hit us was that not a single one of these people came and spoke to us about it. So this was circulating around all of these people that we thought were our friends and that we thought had our back, and not one of them came to speak to us about it. And I found out about this by chance. It came up in conversation. I was talking to one of the ABs at our ecclesia, and I said, I'm really worried about if what I'm telling these ABs in these private calls gets out, what the consequences might be. And they said, unfortunately, we've heard this.
Wow, like it already got out. Someone already broke your trust and you didn't even know because they didn't reach out to you in any way.
Yeah, and I don't believe it was someone at that ecclesia because I hadn't spoken to them about evolution. That's not something.
Yeah, especially that. It's a little bit of a twisted lie.
Yeah, so it kind of feels like we were stabbed in the back on the way out the door. And I couldn't go to any of those ecclesias from that point, knowing that all of these people had just been spreading these rumors, and all of the people that must have heard about this, and not a single one came to us to say, oh, is this true? So in the end, I decided to leave, and I thought, well, I'll continue these conversations, but at this point, I'm not breaking bread anyway. I'm not doing prayers or readings or anything, and we're about to move house.
Okay.
Out of that area, so we thought let's just leave. Let's finish looking at this doctrine and seeing if we believe in it, and then if we do believe in it, then we can join the local ecclesia where we get to. And that never happened. So.
Yeah, it sounds like you were very much a team on that as well, just from the way you've been phrasing it too. So she was already kind of probably having conversations with you about this, and kind of in that transient place of like, well, I'm still unpacking what I learned, but maybe I'm more open to not believing it now. Now I'm more open to just learning about it and seeing where it takes us. Yeah,
I think we both kind of had a very slightly different journey. It was like two squiggly lines that kind of ended up reaching the same conclusion.
Okay.
But yeah, we were definitely in agreement when we left.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's not always the case. And I am hoping eventually to hear more stories where they were able to keep working on the relationship, where if one person stayed and one person left, because a lot of them have been either both people left together or both people left each other. So it'd be nice to see a little more diversity in that, but I'm glad it worked out for you guys with that. Especially because the basis of your relationship, where you'd found each other was through the Christadelphians. All right. So how did it go once you had kind of left? I think it probably helped that you guys had moved at the same time, so that there wasn't really pressure to be at those meetings. And it sounds like you were both ready for that change after the way you had been treated in the end. So what was going on next?
So I guess I mentioned that in some of these ecclesias, people travel very far to confront people who have left.
That sounds scary.
It sounds scary. And we just moved quite far away, like 2 hours away from this area. Okay. And it was really odd that we got barely anything.
Wow.
So even a lot of my friends, I didn't hear from many of them. And obviously it's a two-way street. I wasn't reaching out to them at that point because I wasn't in a great place trying to deal with this. But I found it quite strange that this whole group of people that formed a very large part of our life for a long time, it just felt like that stopped overnight.
Yeah, it's interesting that door was pretty much closed, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few people who reached out, but you could probably 5 people max that I was speaking to or had a message from or something. We even got a message from someone who we'd never met before.
Interesting.
Which I still don't get. I can't get my head around that today. That's
pretty ballsy, let me say. That's pretty gutsy to just go out and be like, hey, stranger, I'm going to try to preach to you to come back. Because I imagine that's usually what it is. That's what I noticed with what I was reached out to.
Yeah. Yeah, and this person has no context to what's led to this point and all of the things we've talked about or the conclusions we've reached. They've got no idea, and they're just sending this letter.
Yeah, so it has to be kind of generic if they don't know you, which is kind of funny. I almost wonder if the other people didn't reach out because they knew some of your reasons or were at least aware of, all of the circumstances leading up to it, where maybe they thought lost cause kind of thing, or, maybe they'll just let you find the truth on your own kind of thing, like come back if you realize your mistake kind of thing.
Yeah, like keeping the door open. It's
but you have to open it if you want to come back. Because I've heard of some people like making people apologize if they try to return, and like these real awkward situations.
Wow.
Yeah, and that people are like, no, I'm going to leave instead.
So I had some people, or one person specifically, essentially telling me that there's no way back.
Oh, God gave you the boot.
Well, essentially, I think there's a verse that says if you blaspheme the Holy Spirit, you can't come back from that. I still don't know how it's twisted to this context, but
I thought God was all about forgiveness.
I thought so too, but yeah.
I feel like all you got to do is get baptized again, and take communion, and you're all good, right?
Yeah. So
interesting, but it's funny because even that diversity of opinions of what happens when you leave, and also, did you blaspheme God? Because I don't think anything you did even counted as blasphemy.
I imagine some things that I said or questions that I asked could have been interpreted in that way, especially when you start questioning morality and the morality of God. I guess earlier I was talking about being quite blunt with phrases and being accurate with how you describe something like the marital rape or coercive rape.
Yes.
I think I got to the point I was asking people why God murdered babies. Which to me was a very factual way of observing.
It's true. They were throwing them in the river and they were murdering the firstborn that didn't have blood over the doors. Like, that's pretty hardcore. There's a lot of blood in that. There's a lot of death in that. And that was God sending his angel, kill the babies. Or I'm causing this circumstance where these babies will be killed. Yeah.
And you look at what leads up to that. And this is one of the biggest things that hits me with morality is that Pharaoh had decided to let them go. And God says, no, I will change his mind so that I can demonstrate my glory through this final plague, which is murdering babies.
Yes, that was God's choice, really, when you really look at it that way.
Yeah. So questioning that, I can see how some Christadelphians would lead to saying that's blasphemy. But it's a very valid question, and no Christadelphian I've ever asked has given me any form of answer to that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's what I find weird about some arguments about, like, God is love, because I'm like, did you read the Bible? Because there's a lot of murder. I think there's more murder than love in each of these stories. Like, if you look at the overall book, I very much agree with you on that.
My favorite attempt for someone to answer that question is that none of those babies would have ever reached the kingdom.
Oh, because they're not Christadelphian babies. But at that point, what about all the Israelites' babies? They also aren't Christadelphians. And
they wouldn't have been very good Christadelphians, and therefore they wouldn't have passed the judgment, and they wouldn't have been in the kingdom. So it was okay to kill them. That's the closest I've got to an answer that it makes sense if you think God is actually immoral. He might actually do that, but.
Andor only cares about a very, very, very specific group of people at a very specific time frame. So did you want to talk at all about, kind of the misconceptions that Christadelphians have? And we do have some that listen to this podcast, whether it's intermittently or loyally. But I think one thing that's just interesting to talk about is the perception of what they see in people who leave. And I think kind of correcting that by having people speak openly about what they experienced and what they were thinking at the time.
So I think they kind of have this fear of accepting that the reason might be something valid. Whenever I was hearing about people leaving while I was a member, I was never told about anyone who had actually left because they had a genuine academic reason for doing so. They looked at the doctrines and decided that they don't make any sense.
It's agree. It was always like a personal failing instead was usually how it was framed from what I remember.
Yeah, and I remember kind of loads of phrases like they've just fallen off the rails or...
fallen away.
Yeah, they just want to go get drunk and things like that. And actually a lot of the...
Daisy dog.
Someone pulled onto the drive. Both. I think a lot of the people that I've met having left... some of these people from growing up that I'd been told had left, I found out the real reasons that they've left.
Ooh.
And it's nothing like what I was told. It's
That's kind of very unsettling to become aware of, I would say, because then I think it shows a higher level of manipulation and control of the situation where they lost control, and so they immediately came out with like rumors or a narrative that kind of benefited them, and in the process villainized or misrepresented the other person, who then had no way to speak for themselves to defend themselves either, since they'd left.
So I think as soon as we mentioned that we were leaving, I mentioned to a few people about these rumors. And it was in a conversation of, I don't believe anymore. And also I'm leaving a bit faster because this has happened. And that's kind of made me feel a bit unwelcome here to continue kind of...
Understandable.
Yeah. And all of a sudden that just became the reason why we were leaving.
Nice and simple to say we bullied them out.
Yeah. Or well, what it actually turned into is you can't forgive people. You need to be forgiving. And
okay. So they framed it where it's a personal failing on your part, where you are not
yeah.
forgiving enough for having had people spread rumors about you and saying that you were disfellowshipped before you had ever even had a conversation about anything like that, it sounds like.
Yeah. And it just, to me, it just invalidated like the 4 years of my life that I'd just spent researching to come to what my beliefs were or were close to reaching. Just by the fact I'd mentioned this one thing, it just became he's leaving because he can't be very forgiving. It's quite odd because no one was actually asking for forgiveness. We still you did that.
It didn't sound like anyone said sorry either, is also what I'm getting, because it sounds like you also never knew who started the rumors and no one took any like accountability or anything like, oh, I didn't realize this would make you leave if I said that you got kicked out.
No, and the funniest thing is they wouldn't tell me who started them.
Really? The ABs were tight-lipped about where the rumor came from that they heard?
Yeah, I was trying to trace this back to where it come from.
Because then you could talk about it with them, be like, what's going on?
Yeah. And they were more protective over the people who had done this than over making us feel welcome.
That's huge. I think that's huge. And, I've totally seen that, especially with even the Manitoulin stuff. I've noticed that only ex-Christadelphians were interested in helping, and really the Christadelphians overall pretty much shut down at every phase of that. Very much a protect your own, but also you were part of their group at the time. So why is it so often that we're just shut down like that and not treated well? And even that lack of communication and seeing that culture where they would not help stop that. I think it's a shame that they saw something that most people would call toxic behavior, spreading rumors and lies, and protect those people, where I'm like, okay, did you spread those rumors then? Or why are you protecting them? Because you think like they're more loyal? Like, what is going on? That really irks me. That's awful.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to the fear again. It's kind of like a psychological defense mechanism that shows that their worldview is just really fragile, that it's challenged by the fact that someone else might have a different opinion. Like they have to rewrite history of what someone else thinks.
Or said or did.
Their own view of the world.
Yeah, constantly. And how warped is that world if you constantly have to rewrite what everyone else is doing to try to make it fit your worldview? If things actually fit, then you shouldn't have to do that. If they are, real and true and grounded in the reality that we all share together, then that shouldn't be something that's ever necessary.
Yeah.
I love these honest conversations.
I'm waiting for the backlash, but it's fine.
I'm amazed I've had as little as I've had. And also, you haven't said anything bad about any individual or even about the one ecclesia. Like, you're like, those people were so lovely. A lot of our things are very general, where it's just there were issues that we noticed with the communities that we were in of the Christadelphians.
Yeah.
And whether they want to take that as constructive criticism or whether they're going to take it as an attack is up to them, and how defensive they are in protecting their worldview. But they're welcome to believe what they want to believe, but we're also more than within our right to discuss our current worldview and what's changed, and have these honest conversations that have kind of been suppressed for so long. We're all kind of isolated when we left.
Yeah.
These are stories no one really gets to hear. So I don't know. I'm always glad to hear about it. And it's funny to me how many different reasons people have had for leaving, different experiences people have had. So let's talk more now about what changed for you after leaving. What has your life been like now? And what positives and negatives have you been dealing with in the fallout of that over the last few years?
So I definitely have far more free time. With...
Well, especially being in the UK with how time intensive I always hear it is now.
Yeah. To be fair, I think our area was just off the scales. I think most other ecclesias aren't to that extreme. But yeah, I still have so much more free time. It's taken me a long time to kind of get used to having a 2-day weekend.
Wow, that's so sad. But honestly, I'm happy for you. I'm happy that that's a problem you have, because that's a great problem to have, is I have so much free time.
Yeah. So we went through a few things of trying to find other things to do on a Sunday morning, because it just felt weird. Like,
you have that ritual.
Yeah. So we went through different things of, like, we'd cooked breakfasts on a Sunday morning, and that would be the Sunday morning thing, or we'd go find somewhere new to walk in the local area, and
those are cute.
Yeah, it was actually really nice, and kind of eventually it kind of faded out because it became normal to actually just have a new day, and we didn't have to find excuses to do something different. But it took a while to get to that point. Far less stress and anxiety about
well, that's
the
good.
earth ending at any point, as much as anxiety about other stuff is still going on. I think I mentioned this already, but just starting to learn who I actually am as a person and form an identity.
That's huge.
And actually be allowed to have views and opinions and to stand up against things that are wrong.
Yeah. You can actually have your own values and figure out what you do believe.
Yeah.
Have there been any big changes, you think, that you've noticed that you would want to share in just what you believe or anything like that, or who you feel like you are?
So I've kind of landed at a place where I was agnostic. So I don't know, to be honest. Having looked at all the evidence, I'm not confident enough to say
so many of us want to do that.
Yeah. And it's actually quite a scary place, like, because being a Christadelphian, often you have to have an opinion. You have to agree with this.
And you have to feel very certain, too.
Yeah. But in any situation, often you are going to reach a conclusion where you just don't have enough information to come to an outcome.
And you have to realize that that's okay. And it wasn't okay before.
And it took a long time to start feeling comfortable with that. But I'm open to seeing new evidence and changing my view. But at the moment, I don't think there's enough evidence to say that there is a God, or there's not enough evidence to say there isn't either, because in some ways you can never prove the negative. So yeah, that's, I guess, my identity in some way. I'm still working on the rest. I guess joining a club, an archery club, that becomes part of my identity, and a lot of my time goes into that. But I'm still working a lot more on the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think especially having been only a few years out, I think it's a really long-term process. And even talking to people who are more recently out compared to the people who have lived decades of their life out, it's very different in how I feel like a lot of those people become very self-assured. You know, they have so much experience to give them insight into themselves and the world around them. And you still have time to evolve. So this may not be where you land. And there's still so much left to explore and experience.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes is just feeling comfortable sharing my opinion or disagreeing with someone in a perfectly positive way. Because it is just something to me that was so foreign and just felt so dangerous, and so much anxiety around that. And it's taken a long time to get to the point where I feel comfortable just politely disagreeing with someone, which is a normal day-to-day activity for most people. But
yeah, I mean, there was really no tolerance for differences, you know, in the general sense there in that environment. And I mean, that would result in splits. That would result in people, you know, talking badly about you behind your back or things like that, you know, you've witnessed and are aware of. So it's nice to get into the world, which is actually more tolerant in general than you would expect after being in that smaller group, and where, you know, you do interact with people who have different beliefs, and that doesn't threaten your beliefs. You can believe whatever you want. And I've never really had someone like aggressively preach to me to try to get me to change my views. You know, because I remember that was always the belief with Christadelphians, is these other people are going to expose you to their beliefs, and they're going to try to change your mind so that you're not a Christadelphian, and they're like fighting to get you to leave. I never found that to be true. And it's funny because now it's the opposite, where you realize most people are just holding their own beliefs and they have their own reasons for it. And it doesn't impact you for them to have different beliefs 99.99% of the time.
Yeah.
Unless it is causing them to have some weird extreme behavior. Generally, you can just coexist and it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's nice to experience the world that way instead of feeling like everyone is this opponent that you have to fight. So if you want to talk about any of the things that have changed with you where it comes to finding and building community, just as some inspiration for people, more ideas and stuff like that for listeners.
I think I found a lot more community in work colleagues after leaving, and that did start before leaving as well. And it broke down this view that everyone in the world is just evil, and evil's an exaggeration of what I was taught, but
sinful would be kind of maybe the word.
Yeah, it's almost like their motivation was assumed, so they're bad people and they do bad things.
Yeah, because they don't have the same purpose as you and guiding principles as you when you're in that group.
Yeah. And really what I found actually when I went out into the workplace and got to know people is that the majority of people are just decent people trying to do the right thing and trying to get through life in the world that we're in. And that kind of really helped me build community within the world. To
feel safe again. With people.
Yeah. So that was quite big. It took me a while to actually feel comfortable, like going into a pub. That was quite a big thing. I got a bit stressed going into pubs for the first time because that wasn't allowed normally.
Absolutely makes sense.
And then the archery club has been another really big thing. So I've met some really great people there. And
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, people who have kind of done more things for me in terms of friendship or emotional support than I've ever had from anyone within Christadelphia.
I found that as well when I left. I think just the emotional availability and safety that you could get with people, it just felt like much more than I had experienced among the Christadelphians. So what led you to connecting with other ex-Christadelphians online?
Oh, yes. So I found it in a Facebook search. And I can't remember what I was searching for, but it just popped up by chance. So it just made me think that God works in mysterious ways. It was meant to be. It was providence.
There we go. So how has being in that group and listening to the podcast been helpful for you?
I can't say no here, can I?
I mean, you're going to be in the hot seat if you do.
Yeah, I found it absolutely brilliant. But both of those resources have been game-changing is probably a good word. Because it's going from being quite isolated in the world to finding a group of people who have been through similar experiences and similar journeys. And as much as there's a lot of variety in those journeys, it's coming from the same group. And it's an element of community that makes you feel like there are people there that understand you. Because as much as I've got to a place where I can have a very frank conversation with someone at work and say, I grew up in a cult, which is the word I use because I think it's accurate. Someone who hasn't experienced that is quite hard for them to really relate with the implications of that. So it's been really great finding that group of people that I can throw things at, and so I'm feeling like this, or share my experiences with, and I get loads of comments, almost validating that, that's understandable that you feel that way. And also we went through a similar thing.
Yeah, I feel like there's always someone who can relate to what we went through with so many different topics. Like even with the Manitoulin thing, someone went through something very, very similar and commented with it, and it was definitely less isolating to know that other people experienced that. Not great that they did, but there's so much community there, and definitely people who will empathize with you and talk to you through different and often difficult things. All right, so let's move into the last few questions. Do you have any advice that you would give to someone who is considering leaving or has recently left the group?
So I think in terms of my journey in leaving, Christadelphians are very good at restricting what you should look at and what you should read and who you should listen to, which is just a good sign that you're in a very high control group.
True.
So start looking at other material, other information. because it shouldn't be a danger to look at other information. Because if it convinces you that it's true, then it's true, to you at least. I think another very big thing is that the process of leaving Christadelphia, some areas of the group, it's very rigid. You have to send a letter and have interviews and various things with ABs and almost beg for forgiveness to leave. I think it's just important it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I would feel comfortable saying this, but that they have zero authority over you. This process that they've created for leaving, you're not bound by it. You don't have to give any form of justification at all. It's just another element, or it's another sign that you're in a very high control group, that you feel like you have to do something like that, like an arbitrary process that really has no merit.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And it's interesting how it's very different for different people. So we've heard of some very extreme ones that basically say, we won't allow you to leave. We have to be the ones who disfellowship you. It's all about us holding the control to the very last second. And that's not true. If you're over 18, legally, there's no one who can say you have to stay and who can say you're in the group when you do not consent. And that's one of the things that's interesting to hear about with cults, because for people who know people who are being harmed in a high control group or a cult, they can't really do anything until that individual says, I don't want to be here. Then at that point, resources can activate and they can do things to try to get that person out. But as long as that person consents to being there, that group can assert control over them. So for all of us who say, I'm out, here's my letter saying I'm out, you are now out. Anything after that is now getting to the territory of harassment and things that are very illegal. And you can start pursuing legal help if you need it, and other things. But yeah, you're not wrong at all with that. And then do you have any like resources such as books, music, podcasts, or anything else that you'd want to recommend to someone who is leaving or has left the Christadelphians that you found helpful?
Yeah, so I've got quite a long list. This is generally people that I found that I've watched or listened to that I found useful. So there's a few YouTube channels. One is called Cosmic Skeptic.
Great name.
Alex O'Connor. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's very kind of logical about the way he thinks.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that very useful to kind of break down a lot of the biases and kind of emotional manipulative arguments that you'll have. Okay. There's another one called Holy Kool-Aid.
Another great name.
Yeah. So he does an intro where he tells people don't drink the Holy Kool-Aid. It's really great. But that's really good because he goes through a lot of kind of the biblical history, prophecy, archaeology that just does not make any sense in the Bible. He covers things like contradictions, and he's got a whole series on Nothing Fails Like Bible History. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's another podcast episode lined up.
I bet. I mean, that's some of the. We're going to have another biblical scholar episode, so we're going to get into a little bit of that. But now I feel like I got to read it and see if there's anything I have to ask Steve about that stuff.
And then the Good Omens TV show is a bit of a light-hearted one.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
When I think of Good Omens, I think of the Neil Gaiman series.
Yeah, I think it's based on that, but there's a TV series.
Okay.
And it's very good at, it will depict biblical stories in a factual way that just makes them look ridiculous, how ridiculous they actually are. So there's an episode on Job that is just fantastic.
Okay.
No spoilers.
Okay. Yeah.
If you read the book, then you know what happens. And then in terms of kind of more mental health resources, Chimp Paradox, and in terms of understanding how the brain works. Complex PTSD is something I looked at. Any books around that subject, because it's not necessarily about self-diagnosing. That's a very bad thing to do, but it's just books like that are going to be very, very relatable for anyone that's grown up in a high control group.
I mean, we've had so many people discuss therapy and mental health issues, so I think we're all seeing that to be kind of a self-evident side effect of what happens when you leave, is at some point having to face up with that and look at how it impacted you and try to find some assistance working through that.
Yeah, I think specifically in terms of complex PTSD, that is a good thing to search for things that are very relatable to a group like the Christadelphians and the impact that will have had. And then I think I mentioned logical fallacies and biases and stuff. That there's two websites that are absolutely fantastic to just lay those out. Is yourlogicalfallacyis.com and yourbias.is. So these are generally actually used to throw at other people. So you can get a link to a specific logical fallacy to put in a comment to throw at someone else. But don't do that. That like the whole point of logical fallacies is to more form your own beliefs. It's just these two websites format it in a way and explain it in a way that is just very easy to understand. And it'll give you like an argument that breaks that fallacy. And I just found that really useful. So
yeah, for breaking your own fallacies that you had. I definitely feel like that was kind of how we were taught with like the apologetics, where you kind of have to learn how to fight other groups and tear them down in order to protect your own faith system. So glad to hear you not recommending doing that. But I think at some point it's helpful to turn it inwards and chip away at things to see if they still hold up. And if so, great. And if they don't, then process that and think about, how to move forward from that.
Yeah. There's one podcast I recommend as well. That's the ex-Christadelphian podcast.
Thanks. Wow. How did you listen to that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so far it's just me. So we'll see if anyone else joins the ex-Christadelphian podcast space. But I've heard good things about it.
I have as well, yeah. It's highly rated.
So far, no one has hate bombed me. I have not had one single negative rating or review going into the third season now.
That's really good.
Yeah. I'm very surprised.
Yeah, me
but
too.
Much appreciated for the people who've left kind comments and help other people find it. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover today that we didn't get to?
No, I don't think so. That's been very thorough.
I think so too. All right. Well, then thank you again, Pete, for coming on the podcast and for sharing your story today. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. That's all for today's episode. So I hope you're feeling just as inspired to live your truth, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone who has helped make this episode of the podcast possible. Today's episode was edited by me, Zinnia. I'd also like to thank Al Kroons for creating our intro music and the ex-Christadelphians that submitted audio for the intro music. If you'd like to join our community, you can find us at the group for ex-Christadelphians on Facebook. You can also follow our social media on Facebook and Instagram at Life After Leaving Podcast. If you'd like to come on the podcast, reach out to me at lifeafterleavingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving a rating and review or sharing this podcast with a friend. That's all for today. Thanks, and see you next time.